I can hear you, and Graham should be recording. Yep, he's on here, so we should be good to go.
All right, wonderful. On the eve of the election, I'd like to call the Village of Cottage Grove board members together today on Monday, February 17th at 6:30 on my watch. We are holding this as a Zoom-only meeting tonight due to the configuration set up for the election tomorrow in the Village Hall. With that, the Zoom link is top of the agenda. We have a quorum. I see that all members are present. And the agenda was properly posted, and we'll try each of us try to find a flag for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, then we have public appearances. This is public's opportunity to speak on any subject. If you are from the public, we just ask that you share your name, your address, your municipality, and hold your comments to no more than 3 minutes, just in case we have a lot of folks who would like to speak. So with that, and since we're all on Zoom, please feel free to raise your hand or shout out.
John, this is Ken Arndt. I don't know. First off, can you hear me?
Yes, Ken, we can hear you.
Awesome. So I don't know if where this falls into the play. I talked to you a little bit about our car cruise meeting or car cruise day, where we put the application in and we're wondering if we need to pay the $200 fee, being it's a Lions Club function. And all the money is actually going back to the Miracle League right there in Cottage Grove. We're hoping to get that waived. If that, I guess it has to go through the board somehow. I'm not sure how that works.
Ken, it's on the agenda this evening, so.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yes.
So it'll come up later then. All right.
Yes. Anyone else? All right. With that, then we'll move right on to the agenda. Next is discuss and consider the meeting minutes from our special board meeting held on February 3rd. Any questions, comments regards to the meeting minutes as presented from board members?
This is Heidi. I would make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
All right. Thank you, Heidi. Is there a second?
Cindy will second.
Thank you, Cindy. Motion second. Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next then, we were going to have a presentation to the board in regards to the missing middle housing from Olivia Perry. Unfortunately, she's not able to join us this evening, so we're going to get that rescheduled as soon as we can with her and our calendars coordinated. So we'll move on, and that'll come up in a future village board meeting. And then we have new business. First of all, discuss and consider a permit for New Tech Painting LLC at 645 Sandpaper Trail in regards to a food truck, similar to what they had before. I don't know if
I can talk to it.
Yeah, I was going to say, Lisa.
Yeah, it's exactly what they have done in the past. They will have food trucks, only it will be down on Sandpaper Trail instead of on Cottage Grove Road. So similar to what he's done in the past.
All right. Any questions, comments from board members?
Yeah, I got a question. It doesn't really have any time frame. So is this in perpetuity? Is it certain days of the week? It's any day of the week? It was a little unclear in that application.
Sure. So the way that the permit works is that it's good for a year from the date of issuance. I believe last year when he did it, it was on, don't quote me, I think it was Wednesdays that he had food trucks, but or that he had different ones at different times. It wasn't every day of the week.
And so the trucks would be parked on Sandpiper, whereas in the past it was in his lot there on,
Yeah, so it would be in his drive, his
okay.
property
So
too.
the truck wouldn't be on the street, but,
No.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? And Lisa, I believe you're right. It was Wednesdays, if I recall correctly. At least when I saw them.
This is Heidi. I would make the motion to approve the host permit from New Tech Painting LLC at 645 Sandpiper Trail as presented.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Then we move on to discuss and consider a temporary alcohol license for the Cottage Grove Lions Club on May 10th, and that's in connection with their car cruise event.
Yes, John, that's right. It's just that we need a separate motion on it just because of how alcohol license go, but it would be just a 1-day temporary license for their event.
Any questions from board members on this?
I'll make a motion to approve the temporary alcohol license for Cottage Grove Lions Club on May 10th, 2025 as applied for.
I'll second. Cindy.
All right, thank you both. We got a motion second. Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? I didn't hear a lot of ayes, that's why I asked them.
Neither did I, John.
Let's try that again. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That sounds better. And I'll abstain since I'm a member of the Lions Club, so motion carries. With that, then we have a whole slew of fun things happening in the Grove coming up here. So this is discuss and consider a special event permit applications for the following events. And we'll start at the top. First up is the Cottage Grove Lions Club car cruise slated for May 10th. And as was indicated, this is a fundraiser for the Miracle League field. So, and then it's nice we have staff notes at the bottom of each of these to kind of guide us through, any concerns that staff may have. So I'll open the floor.
Are they asking for waivers or are they just looking to get it approved?
I will take the first swing at this and I'll have Larry correct me if I misspeak here. But if you looked at the ordinance, what was passed by the board, there are certain qualifications for them to be waived. So at this point, you heard from Ken Arndt from the Lions Club. You will most likely hear from the fire department for Fireman's Festival and Hot to Trot. The other two that are on the agenda tonight are not entities that are within the Village of Cottage Grove, or nor have they partnered with the Village of Cottage Grove. So I will let Larry speak to it if you want further information.
I was just wondering if we're gonna do them all individually, or if we could just do unanimous consent to approve them all in one go, but if we need to do them individually, that's fine.
We need to do them individually.
So just to pick up quick on what Lisa just said, this relatively new ordinance is set up so that there's some specific Cottage Grove entities, including the fire department, EMS, that are for whom the fees are waived. But for other entities, for there to be any adjustment on fees, they really have to ask to partner with the village. In other words, in effect, have the village be the host. And so those are your opportunities under the ordinance to adjust or waive fees if it's requested.
All right, thank you, Larry. Okay, so again, first up is the Lions Club Any questions, comments regarding that request?
So Ken brought up the waiver, so that's really not noted on there. So how is that being managed?
I'll jump in there. This is Larry. If you want to waive their fee, if the board wants to waive the fees, then the board has to vote to partner with that organization and in effect come under the village's exemption from having to get a special event permit for its own events. So it would have to be a village and organization combined, third party working with the village to run an event.
Okay, so Ken and the car club group would work with who? John?
This Larry, the ordinance doesn't lay out how that relationship would work. It just says that the section, the permit requirement doesn't apply to the village, and the village may team up with a third party, and there's certain requirements that that third party must meet, including, as Lisa said, being an entity for which there's a sort of location within the village.
Okay, so I'm still not clear. Does the car club need to apply for a waiver, or what does that process look like, Larry? Because it's really unclear.
Yeah, this is a new ordinance and there isn't
I
a
understand.
process. I think ideally what an applicant would do is they would, when they fill out their application, they would, or prior to filling out the application, they would come to the village and say, hey, do you want to, partner with the village to run this? And so I guess what I'm saying is, if what you want to do is waive their fees, you should vote to partner with this entity to run this special event, and then staff and them will figure out how best to do it. And the other
Larry, I'm not
criteria,
sure.
yeah, the other criteria are the organization is a nonprofit organization. Under IRS code, which the line should be, has a principal place of business located within the village of Cottage Grove. The organization has been continually in existence for at least 5 years. The special event will not charge a mandatory entrance fee. And partnering wouldn't violate other laws, and the cost of village services to organize the special event will not exceed $5,000.
Does
And they
that
also
help?
have to
Go
have
ahead, Cindy.
insurance. They have to have insurance, correct? And I don't know if there's an arrow in their application to know that they can't provide the documents or they can't provide insurance.
The requirement for insurance would not be applicable if the village partners with them.
Huh.
That doesn't mean that the village, if when you all decide to do this kind of thing, that you won't require that of someone, you can still do that. It's just not required in the ordinance.
I mean, this is what we spent months writing and rewriting and editing. And for number one, I'll make a motion to approve the Cottage Grove Lions Club Car Cruise special events permit with a waiver and instruct staff to partner with the Lions Club on this event.
All right, thanks, Cindy. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All right, thank you, Heidi. Any other discussion?
Do we need to give any further clarification to staff on what partnering means, or staff and the organization can work it out?
I think we understand what you want.
Okay, great.
Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor then?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? I'll abstain for the same reason. With that, all right, so now we got a little bit of clarification from Larry. Thank you. We'll move on to the next one. And the next one is the Wisconsin Youth Company, the Wisconsin Paddle Battle to be held on May 17th through the 18th at our pickleball courts.
I don't know if you want any clarification on this one or if you're good to go on it.
Looks pretty straightforward.
I'll make a motion to approve the Wisconsin Youth Company, Wisconsin Paddle Battle special events permits.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second then. Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Next, then we move on to the American Parkinson's Disease Association and their annual Parkinson's Half Marathon and 5K to be held on April 12th. Hopefully we won't have snow then.
I had one question on that. So I looked through this. So it's an event from 9 to noon. They're going to be selling alcohol. I didn't quite understand that.
So in years past, they're not selling, they give it out. I think it's part of their run. They are going to need to partner with somebody to get that temporary alcohol license because under the state statutes, it can only be either a chamber or a bona fide club, such as what you just approved for the Lions Club. And that's what they did last year. As they partnered with the Lions Club in order to have beer at this event. So they have not submitted that portion of it yet. So when that does come, that will be back on an agenda if they do continue to move forward in that path.
You mean giving out the beer? Because that was interesting when I read through it. It says we give out beer. I thought, well, what? So they just give out cans of beer? What's
Yes.
okay? So they're not selling it; they're giving it out, but they still need the liquor license and the approval.
Correct, because of the way the state statutes, whether you're giving it or selling it, it's the same difference in the eyes of the law. So it would need to have a alcohol license.
Okay, and so it's noted that a liquor license is necessary under a separate application. They got it circled, so they can't. We can go ahead and approve it, and they can't give out the beer until they've got that in hand. Is that what you're saying?
Correct,
Okay,
because they need to figure out how they're going to obtain that license yet.
got it.
Do you think it would be, well, it's coming up so quickly, because they also asked for a waiver, but in order to be eligible for a waiver, you have to partner with the local organization. Is that also?
Correct. We're meeting, Sean and I and Chief Gary are meeting with them, the organizers, on Friday, so that it's been kind of a little bit of back and forth on this one because last year they partnered with local businesses that helped them do this, and now they're taking it back and doing it under their organization. So they seem to be a little unorganized at this point, but they wanted to get their permit in. So all of that, like I said, if they were to apply for an alcohol license, that will be on a future agenda.
But we can approve it as is, and they wouldn't be eligible to serve alcohol, and they would be, their estimated permit fees are listed in their packet, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And just a quick question, are there concerns with the fact that it is the same day as a large rugby event in the same park? For parking and the routes are running around the
Seems like it's a
fields.
potential problem given the number of people they're talking.
I think Sean and Chief Gary are on, and I think they're better to potentially answer those questions than I am.
Yeah, I can jump in first. Thanks, Lisa. It's been discussed. Yes, it is the same weekend as a large rugby event. We've tried to get either entity to move. And from a parks maintenance standpoint, we can handle things I'll let Chief speak to the parking aspect of it.
Evening. In the last 2 years, we've been able to accommodate both events, but yes, it is a slight struggle for parking accommodations and making sure for a safe route. That's why my recommendation is for the runners, if they're going to be leaving out of the park, that they actually have to take the path and not on the roadway on Clark or anything, so that we can try to alleviate some of that vehicle pedestrian concern that exists there. Again, it's the recommendation at this time.
And parking,
Parking, they
think
end
we
up,
have enough?
they typically find parking everywhere. And unfortunately, yes, there's some enforcement actions that do have to be taken for those that do choose to park illegally. So
How many participants and spectators are there for the large rugby event? We don't have that on this. There it indicates 825 participants in this Parkinson's run. Is it the same as last year? Is it more? Do we have any concern in the change in terms of participation and the parking issues?
As of right now, I would anticipate to be similar to last year. So again, we have not received anything from rugby related to any of their events, so I can't speak to their event or what they anticipate for their attendance.
So does the rugby event need a special permit as well? Or because it's their facility, they don't?
If, as of right now, specifically their facility does not, until it impacts the traffic and flow of service vehicles in the area. So again, will have to be addressed at a future date potentially.
Chief, I was wondering, with these packets, does that then like triggers things like no parking zones and like how you'd make decisions to put out like temporary no parking orders? Because there are other places to park that are within walking distance of the park, but not all of them are good choices, like along Vilas and such. So I was just wondering if like this sort of thing helps you better prepare for that.
It does. It helps us to make the modifications, again, depending on what we anticipate as being the impact to the area. Could there be temporary no parking? Yes. Again, speaking of Clark Street specifically, going from the park towards Main Street, we could post it as no parking to allow the runners there, but I'm still going to have to deal with motor vehicle traffic trying to get to the park, both between the runners and those utilizing the park for other functions. So that road would still be open for this event.
Is there a different location we might be able to recommend that they kind of headquarter at instead of all being at Bakken Park? Is there a different park that might make sense, community park, or I don't know. I'm just wondering, has that avenue been considered at all?
Yes, sir. We've Sean here. We've discussed this with Parkinson's, and it kind of centrally they tie into the Glacial Drumlin Trail as well. So the location is really premium for them. We haven't. I don't think we have another area that we can accommodate that many people in one spot. Bakken is really our best shot.
And you said in last year, this also happened on the same weekend?
Correct.
And everything was as smooth as possible?
That's a great way to put it. It was controlled chaos, but I don't believe there was any incidents down there. People moved through and got out of the park, and after last year, they went to Grey Wolf area. BB Jack's is where they kind of headquartered This year, they'll still supposed to be out of there by 1 o'clock, so that should ease it up quite a bit.
All right, well, I'll make a motion that we approve the application from American Parkinson's Disease Association as applied for.
Lorraine seconds.
All right. Motion second then. Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain?
I'll abstain.
All right. Thanks, Cindy. Next, then we have the Cottage Grove Volunteer Fire Department's Firemen's Festival to be held on June 12th through the 15th this year. I saw Kevin on earlier, but I don't know if you want to
I'll
chime
make a
in.
motion. Oh,
Okay.
can I put a motion out there, John? or-
Absolutely.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the event permit application from the Cottage Grove Volunteer Fire Department.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion second. Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. Next, going through the list here, in conjunction with the Firemen's Festival, the Hot to Trot, which will be held on June 14th.
Society, I'd make the motion to approve the Hot to Trot Cottage Grove permit application as applied.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion second. Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain?
I'll abstain.
I think you're knee deep into it.
We have 142 people signed up.
Already, awesome. Next, then we'll move on to discuss and consider the Black History Month proclamation. This came in from Chris and seconded by Maureen. Chris, do you want to go ahead?
Oh yeah, there's not much really for me to say about it. It's Black History Month, and I just thought that it would be good for the village to recognize it as such.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Anything from anyone else on this?
I guess I just want to add on to that. I think it's very important to recognize the contributions that Black Americans have brought to both the community, state, and the nation. Also, it's important to recognize that we should promote inclusivity and foster a sense of belonging among our residents. Also, demonstrating leadership and progress. I think it fosters an inclusive community, and it also acknowledges the diverse history and a commitment to equity in our community. So I just wanted to add that.
All right. Thank you, Laurie. Any questions or comments in regards to this from board members or?
I would make the motion to adopt the Black History Month proclamation.
Second.
We have a motion second then. Any other discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries. Next, then we have discuss and consider ordinance 03, 2025, and this is in regards to the park hours or the park hours.
Thanks, John.
Yep.
Yeah, as most of you know, our current park close hours are posted at 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. With the Bark Park being is that there really is little to no light back there, and being consistent with other area places just like that, we are asking to make the Bark Park hours closed from sunset to sunrise. It also gives the PD an opportunity to address anything that happened before 10 p.m. and after sunset. So just asking for that change in the ordinance.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 03-2025, the dog park hour ordinance update as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion second then. Any other discussion?
I'm just curious, has there been any issues of note, or this is of just thinking in the future?
No, I don't believe there's been any issues to this point. It's just that's, again, we kind of have it posted as sunrise to sunset. So we wanted to just make sure that we could be legally post that.
Thank you.
Good question. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Sarah. All right, any other discussion? All right, having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? Motion carries. All right, then we move into reports from village boards, commissions, and committees, starting with Utility Commission.
All right, we met on Wednesday, February 12th at 5 p.m. We approved the minutes and the bills, both unanimously. We talked about drawings for the tower, the water tower for Verizon to put some stuff up there. That was approved unanimously. We talked about the offer to approve purchase for the lands for the future RIV station, which I also have as being approved unanimously. We talked about the fire hydrant at Fireman's Park. Charlie brought this up because it doesn't, the line there is not very good, so they shut the whole hydrant off in the fall to prevent any burst pipes. Charlie wants a water stop after the hydrant so that we can keep the hydrant on. And they're gonna, Kylie's gonna look at prices and bring that back at the March meeting. Update on sanitary survey report. The DNR completes this every 3 years. We had two dings against us. One is the materials inventory was not up to what DNR wanted. And two, the emergency response plan is not being maintained. And on that one, Kyle is working on it. Should be ready Q1 or Q2. We also talked about lighting at the water tower. Right now at night, I believe the Milwaukee side of the water tower is lit, where the Madison side is not. And Charlie is interested in getting both sides lit. We are going to look into the price on that and see if that's a reasonable price as well. And we'll come back to that at the next meeting. New business statistics for water billings. Those were not ready, so we are going to come back to that at a future meeting. Engineers report. Sorry, let me just pull this up so I can reference it here. The West Lawn Estates, waiting on feedback on the lift station for that. Quarry Ridge is under construction. They completed sanitary laterals and water main construction. Amazon, waiting on some sewer permits. And Heyday, we're going to be talking about later tonight, I believe. And then Bridge lift stations on pause. They've taken it to 90%. We're just waiting on the developer for that. SCADA upgrades are still ongoing. Moving on to the director's report. There was they dewatered a force main air valve release, and they're going to start doing that yearly to make sure it's maintained. Madison Metro Sewerage District has a new executive director, and staff is going to be meeting with them in April. The Public Works Department has been working on with Inga to update the utility page on the on utility projects for the website, so people can see all that stuff fairly easily. And the monitor well waiver application is good to go on the application. We are good to go on that, and so we are waived for additional applications. And after about 15 minutes, we adjourned. Next meeting is on March 12th.
All right, thanks, Chris. Any questions, comments from board members? All right, you're not off the hook yet. How about Public Works?
All right, Public Works met the same night at 5:30. Approved the previous minutes for nothing. We got an update on the 2025 streets and pedestrian improvements projects. One of the things we had been discussing was for the multi-use path that's going from Southern Grange to N, whether or not to have concrete or asphalt crossing driveways. And it looks like we're going with concrete just because it's a little sturdier. And we talked about whether or not we can add any color to that. They're going to get some prices for that and see what that looks like. We had a member that just wanted to make sure that those crossings are marked and easy to see so that people know who has the right of way there. It's a bid for North and Oak Street. I don't know what that says. Sorry. They're bidding out in March. Pulverizing, hoping to be done by August 22nd of this year. And the entire path planned to be done by the end of December. And we decided for the crosswalk light. They had two options. One was the full one that goes over the street, like we have down by like Noodles. Or there's a one that's easy to move and temporary and it's just on the side. We decided to go with the full one that goes over the street. Updates on the bench. We moved to talk toward the end of the meeting about it, and then we ended up tabling that for the next meeting. So we didn't actually talk about that at all on last Wednesday. We got an update on the sustainability goals. Let me just pull that up real quick. Apologies, I should have had that up.
Yeah, Chris, I could maybe touch on that real quick,
Sure.
if you don't mind.
That would be fantastic.
So don't worry, that document will come back to the village board. Really what Public Works and Sustainability was looking is to get some better roles and responsibilities defined. What is sustainability and what is their role in the overall process? So we presented some initial guidelines for sustainability options as it goes to the overall budget process and things that Kyla will be doing on an annual basis. We were given additional direction on some achievable goals per se. So why what was in the Public Works agenda packet was more kind of initial guidelines to direct departments when they're looking at vehicles or facility options. The committee still wants to see some more achievable goals and benchmarks. And that kind of led into the second sustainability question, Chris, that I'll let you talk about, and then I believe we do have Mike here from Enberg Anderson to go over.
Can I just like go over it quick and then go over the rest of the agenda and then we can circle back to that? Is that cool? Okay, thanks. Okay. Okay, and then I think the only question that we had in Public Works about the sustainability goals is Nick was just wanting to have us have like an overall goal of what we're trying to get to. So we're going to come back to that later. New business, we got update on solar panels at MSB. The app is up and going. It looks like we've saved 80 kilograms of CO2. Is that right, Kyla?
Kilograms?
Or 80 something. Kilowatt, yes, kilowatts. Sorry. Poor writing. Kilograms.
30 kilowatt hours.
It's the equivalent of 1,300 trees. We discussed the recommendation for the sustainability options. We were given 3 options, which I think we'll probably go over in a little bit. They were leaning towards option 3, and the committee passed option 3, 3-1. The engineer's report, largely the same as the utility engineer's report. The only thing I've written down here for was for Heyday, talking about the extension of Fundamental Way. The director's reports, they're doing tree trimming. Existing light pole bases from village streetlights have been removed and restored. Winter Salt Week was the last week of January. The staff did EV infrastructure webinar. And rain barrels will be for sale again this year. Tentatively, it looks like ready in April 12th. And again, updates for the website as well. And oh, we did have one public hearing, not public hearing, but one person from the public who wanted to talk. They were asking about someone near the proposed lift station had an Alliance worker come out there and trying to get right away for, they weren't sure if it was for a transformer or something, but they had questions about that. And that is something we're going to come back to at the next Public Works meeting to discuss. And I think we adjourned at like 6:20 or 5:58 or something like that. And that's it. So then we have a discuss and consider on tonight's agenda. So I will turn it over to someone else.
Thank you. Yeah, this is Mike with Enberg Anderson. We did meet last week on the sustainability aspects of the proposed police station. I actually have Tim Meeker with JDR. He's going to explain kind of the sustainable features that we're looking at in the building. I will actually share my screen potentially. Okay. So I'm Chair Messine. I will let Tim just kind of give you a download on what we're looking for currently in the sustainable side of things. I will talk a little bit more in the Plan Commission update about the rest of the project. So I'll turn it over to Tim.
Thanks, Mike. Can everybody hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, perfect. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. My name, as Mike indicated, Tim Meeker. I'm with JDR Engineering, mechanical engineer by trade, and just kind of want to run through some of the sustainable features of the proposed police department. And I'll kind of run through them by discipline. You know, when we talk mechanical, that's heating, ventilating, cooling the building. The sustainable features that we're looking at there are utilizing a ground source heat pump system with distributed heat pumps through the building. That would provide building heating and cooling by using the earth as really a heat sink. So during the winter time, we'd be extracting energy from the earth. During the summertime, we'd be putting it back in when we cool the building. So proposing a distributed heat pump ground source system for that. When it comes to ventilating the building, we're proposing air-to-air energy recovery systems. Those air-to-air energy recovery systems will take the energy from air that needs to be exhausted out of the building and transfer that energy to air that needs to come into the building for ventilation. So, yeah, as Mike's indicating on the drawings there, you can see some of those units on the roof. We call them dedicated outdoor air systems, which are taking the exhaust out of the building and pre-treating the ventilation air that needs to come in. So we're looking at that as a system there. And Mike, maybe if you can go back, I probably jumped the gun a little bit talking about the ground source system. Thank you. So that drawing there indicates what we would use for a bore field, or what we call a bore field for the ground source system. So that what that ground source system entails is what we're proposing is doing vertical bores into the earth, probably anywhere from 300 to 500 foot deep each. And that provides our heat sink for pulling energy out of the earth and putting it back in. And that would be a closed loop system to each one of those vertical bores. So we're not affecting, we're not taking groundwater out or putting groundwater back in. It's not an open system. It's a closed loop system. So there's no mixing of water that's in the earth versus water that's in the piping for heating and cooling the building. So that bore field would be located underneath the parking lot, as Mike's indicating there. Yeah, so we leave the green space available for future consideration, expansion, building, things like that. So that's where we're proposing the bore field. If I continue a little bit on the mechanical system, we talked about using ground source, air-to-air energy recovery as well. The floors in the garage and the sally port, we're proposing to utilize a low temperature hot water heating system in those space. So it's a radiant floor that would emit heat from it to help temper those spaces. Now those are relatively unoccupied spaces, so we're not heating that to 70 degrees. We're heating it to a temperature that's going to be pleasing to people that are coming out in and out of there with parked cars. It'll help melt snow for moisture that falls off the vehicles. So in those spaces, again, we'd utilize a radiant floor. Also, when we're talking about the mechanical systems, we'd be looking at the digital control system. So any part of the mechanical system would be controlled by a direct digital control system. The easiest way to save energy is to turn things off. And by utilizing a direct digital control system, we can work with the occupancy of the building. And when spaces are not occupied, we can turn back or turn off heating and cooling systems so we're not needlessly heating or cooling a space that's not occupied. So those are a little bit on the sustainable mechanical features of the building. From a plumbing perspective, we're proposing to use a domestic solar hot water heating system. And as Mike's indicating there, we have solar hot water panels there that will heat domestic water for hot water use applications. And then also, pretty standard, we're looking at for any of the water coolers or drinking fountains in the space, they'll have bottle fillers associated with them. Also looking at some of the plumbing fixtures to be sensor operated versus manually operated. That won't be all of the fixtures, but it'll be some of them. So just a few of the plumbing sustainable features. Electrically, of course, all of the building lighting will be LED, both interior and exterior. So LED lighting. We'll also be using occupancy sensors, dimmers, and daylight sensors in the building. Those occupancy sensors will turn lights on and off. Again, when a space is not occupied, lights will automatically go off. That's a pretty standard feature. But also those occupancy sensors will be tied to the mechanical equipment like we talked about before. So when a building is, or when a space is sensed to be unoccupied, again, we can turn off heating and cooling equipment so we don't needlessly heat or cool a space that's not occupied. Making provisions for electric vehicle charging, both day one, and making provisions for future. As things go more electric, we've got the capability and the infrastructure to make that happen. So any of the electrical gear would be sized for future electric vehicle use by the village, and then also as well for just vehicle charging in general in the parking lot. So those are some of the sustainable features that we're talking about. And as Mike's showing on the drawing there, that's a preliminary photovoltaic layout of the roof, showing panels that would be orientated to provide our PV for the building. So I want to talk just a little bit about electrification, natural gas usage, carbon footprint. So when it comes to the building, and again, I know that there's updates and things happening with the Sustainable Committee. When we talk about natural gas usage in this facility, as proposed currently, the natural gas usage would be for domestic water heating. Of course, we have the solar thermal hot water heating, but on days when it's cloudy and at nighttime, it's hard to make hot water with no sun. So we will have domestic water heating equipment in the building. That right now is proposed to be natural gas. We have a standby generator as well. We have makeup air units for the ventilation provided in the garage and the sally port. And by nature of code, we have a large parking garage, which requires, I would say, not a significant amount of ventilation, but a lot of ventilation per code. right now, those makeup air systems for the Sally Port and the garage are proposed to be natural gas, just due to the volume of air that we're trying to ventilate the space with. And lastly, natural gas, we have a natural gas boiler in the facility just to provide kind of a backup heat source for the geothermal loop. So in the dead of winter, for some reason, if the geothermal loop cannot keep up, we would supplement that geothermal loop with a little bit of heat from a boiler. So that's more of a backup provision. So again, when we talk about electrification and natural gas usage in the building, natural gas would be tied to domestic water heating, makeup air units, and a boiler for backup heating only in the geothermal system. Mike, did I miss anything that
No,
we
I think you covered
talked
it.
about? Yeah. So that's just kind of a rundown of sustainable features for the facility.
So you included a nice little write up there in terms of the cost of the photovoltaic, the electric.
Yep.
What's the cost of the hot water, solar? I mean, when you look at the duty cycle on that, I'm just curious, what is the cost for that backup or that feature that would be backed up by natural gas?
For the domestic water heating?
Yes.
Yeah, so we have a little chart in there as well, and I don't know that we've gotten costs, Mike, per se, on first costs for the domestic water heating versus the savings. So I don't know that we have that on hand right at this time. I think we know the BTUs that we'd be saving per year, but I don't know that we've put a number on that. And I'm looking at the chart right now, and I apologize. Our plumbing engineer is not at the meeting here, but I don't know that we have that number right on hand right now.
Yeah. And I'm assuming the solar collection is going to be seasonal. So in terms of the true duty cycle, is it really 35%?
I would again. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I didn't say anything. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I thought I thought you did. Yeah. So I mean, we will still collect energy in that solar thermal system during the winter months. Obviously, the production is not nearly as good as it would be during the summertime. So that 35% number, I don't have the information on that. I can go back to our plumbing engineer and determine that. But I don't have a good number on that right now.
Be good to see the numbers on that. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously costs are a big deal when I look at the photovoltaic. I mean, the return on investment is something I would say, this could be added later. So why would we spend $500,000 on a $21,000 a year return? It's a horrible economic project. Again,
Right.
obviously sustainability is important, and I
Right.
certainly can appreciate the impact that we would have, but that's something that could be added later. And again, I guess when we look at each of these, we need to think about that. The other question I had is on the geothermal, which is really great. I love it. You talk about potential tax credits on option C. Do we have a flavor for what that's going to do, the cost per square foot in terms of the cost?
No, I don't believe we have it, Mike. I don't know if you wanted to mention
Um,
anything on that.
Yeah, so Pete, just to jump in, so we are actually working with Focus on Energy, which will really focus around the geothermal system. Those numbers we got the information kind of too late, so they are working on that, and we will surely forward that when we get those informations on Focus on Energy. So talking with Myron, who's been doing our estimate on here, with looking at the tax credit opportunities with everything included on the value, they were potentially looking at around $600,000 as a possibility to get tax credit back for all of the systems together. So it's really based on your sustainable one. So if it's geothermal only, then we'll have to break down a little bit more the numbers and see what's available with that. So
I mean, the right thing to do is, that we really need to break them out so we understand how each one affects the total cost.
Correct. Yeah. And to answer, a rough number getting from Myron I think it was around 50,000 on the solar hot water value of that. So, we're in the process of getting, we
Okay.
just got the estimate together, so we need to pull some of these numbers together.
So more to come.
Yes.
Any other questions on the sustainable features, at least what we call the MEP sustainable features in the building?
In terms of expansion, does the geothermal system adequate for a future expansion down the road, or would there need to be an additional bore field?
Yeah, right now the current bore field does not account for future expansion. It's hard to do that without knowing what exactly that expansion wants to be, and when it's going to occur. So right now that bore field is not planned for future. If we want to plan for future, I think we need to have a better idea of what that expansion may want to look like and what it would be used for. If that answers your question.
I think we have an understanding of what that may be, and moving forward, I think we can plan that in. I think one of the things that we need to get is a bore field test completed that will allow us to better understand the type of subsoils that we have and how deep these will really get. So that doing the bore test is something that is on our schedule to do here if this project moves forward, and that'll give us better understanding on the size it needs to be. And at that time, I think, Cindy, it would be easy enough to understand the expansion to the west will be office space. The expansion to, I guess, the north part of that is really garage space at that point. So I think it's easy enough to get that information, but we do need a bore test moving forward.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you added that, Mike. Yeah. So what we are proposing is to do a bore test, what we call a thermal conductivity test for the bore field. Okay. So what that entails is a well driller coming in, drilling a hole to or a bore to anywhere between 300 and 500 feet. They actually circulate water in that vertical bore, and we can determine the thermal conductivity of the earth at that point. Because the earth, depending on what is, if it's granite, if it's sand, if there's water flowing through it, the thermal conductivity of that single vertical bore can vary quite widely. And I think we've got a pretty good gauge as to what it would be based upon other test bores in the Madison area. But we're doing a building of relatively significant size, and it's just beneficial to do that test bore to determine exactly what we have for thermal conductivity and determine exactly how many bores we need and how far or how deep we can go. If we hit granite at 200 feet, well, we know, each one of those bores can only go 200 feet, so we need more of them. If we can drill down to 500 feet, we need less bores. So it just helps us determine the size of the bore field and the depth of the bore field. And then to Mike's point, if we do have a good idea as to what that addition may be, square footage and what the occupancy and use of it is, we can certainly include that into the bore field design. That future capacity.
Well, we wouldn't want to put the bores in, and if it's underneath the asphalt, I guess we'd have to kind of understand that when we get to that point. So I think it's way too early to talk about adding capacity.
Right, agreed. Right, because you're right, that bore field is under the asphalt. But is there green space where we could put some additional bores? Again, it really depends on a lot of things. To your point, if this addition is 3 years away, or if it's 15 years away, I think that plays into the discussion as well.
So to discuss and consider, John. So what are we considering here?
So I can help John with this a little bit. So things like solar panels and stuff like that are not related to water, obviously those can be included as options when this project is bid out. But things like the actual mechanical systems, we have to pick a lane and give direction to Enberg Anderson on what to move forward. So Public Works and Sustainability recommended option C, and then ultimately to at least include getting in the bid, the solar panels on the roof, as well as the solar panels for the hot water. Because again, those can be reduced after the fact, but we want to at least get pricing on it so the board can see what the options are for that project. Mike or Tim, did I misspeak by any means on that?
No, I think mechanically speaking, that's correct. I mean, if we need to understand if the geothermal system is the way we want to go. If we don't want to use geothermal heat pumps, then it's really a complete system design change. It's not an alternate. It's really a building wide system change. So that affects a lot of things.
And so that's primarily why we brought this to the board, because some of those decisions were getting kind of later in that process. So they need some direction on what system to go forward with.
Cameron, I had a financial question. Are we able to apply for rebates at all for energy saving at all?
There is a ton of grants and resources that we can certainly apply for. Likely, I would need to lean on some outside assistance to help us with that, just to make sure we're capturing all the grant opportunities possible, whether that be the Enberg Anderson team or an outside firm. We just internally aren't equipped to handle this magnitude of grants. So we would certainly explore every option. Similarly, you guys hear me say this over and over again with operating account. Anything that we can do to implement to save on operating costs are things that we can, put back into the community right away. So even, $20,000 savings on one of the features. It's just money that can go back into operating other needs of the village.
But again, that comes at an expense of $460,000 of incremental debt, Cameron. So we need to look at the total cost and the total return on investment for residents. And I think it really comes down to the potential tax credits. But when I look at so you take them one at a time. When I look at this, the geothermal makes a ton of sense. The return on investments there, it's only about $100,000 incremental over the natural gas only option. It's got a great sustainability impact on our carbon footprint, and there is the potential tax credits that make it even more compelling. So to me, that's a recommendation from Public Works. I agree with that 100%. I don't know if we're going to consider one at a time or you want to do them all at once.
Yeah, and I think Mike does have some payback in there. I think the simple payback that was calculated on the solar array was 13.6 years. And typically that's about a 20-year to 25-year asset, just depending on some of the components and warranties. So I think you still end up a little bit better, but that was one of the things that I certainly should be added as an option later, that, if the bid pricing comes back, we can either say, yes, we want to move forward with this, or no, it's just not worth the savings.
Yeah, the heating system, we need to make a decision because you really can't add that later. The solar, we can add later without a problem. So.
Is that a motion or?
I mean, what are we looking for? I mean, I make a motion to give Enberg Anderson the direction to continue on the heating system using option C, the option C distributed geothermal system.
Do they have enough direction though on because there's solar collection, hot water production? Tim, I don't know how much that changes your design.
No,
So
it shouldn't really.
Doesn't at all. Okay.
No,
I just wanted to make sure they got what they needed just in case.
Right.
Later
The solar hot water is just for
the domestic use.
It's domestic use. It's not for heating. So that's totally separate.
Right.
There's not enough information here for me to feel comfortable that it's the right thing for the village financially to look at. I don't know what the cost is. I don't know what the impact the savings is. But when I look at the photovoltaic, that's a no-brainer to me. We need to cut that and add that down the road as a future option to try to get the total project cost down.
Can you bring solar? option back with costs and potential grants to give us an idea of what the total cost and return on investment might be? And then also, I guess, how does this align with future sustainability goals? You know, do we want to be net zero? Or is the emphasis on vehicles? Is the emphasis on facilities? So I think there's a little bit more work to do from that group as well.
Yep. And I think, you know, in some of our meetings leading up to this, we knew this facility, it would be cost prohibitive to get to net zero. And so one of the original guidelines with Public Works Committee is we needed to would evaluate what would it take to be net zero. And the simple option here would be an investment that would make anybody here uncomfortable, in my opinion. And so that's what ultimately Tim and his team came back with, was something a little bit more reduced. So we'll get some numbers. I want to, with the grant, on the grant side of things, that takes some time to pull together. So I'm not sure how quickly the board is looking to see at least some options that are available. Additionally, if we're looking to get a consultant involved, I don't want to get the cart in front of the horse and spend some time on some consulting time to get these grants, and then, you know, ultimately don't move forward with that. So that's where I would need some direction from the board.
Geothermal heating, I think, is a green light. I mean, we'd have to obviously get whatever motion and approval, but that option C is like a no-brainer to me. That's where we need to go. It's the 2 solar systems that I think we need more information before we can make any decisions that are definitive in terms of direction.
Yeah.
Was there a motion made?
I made one on the
Yes,
heating.
and we didn't second, so I'll second it, but I know that probably should have happened earlier before we kept discussing, sorry.
That's fine. Any other discussion on this?
So I just want to clarify, the motion is to proceed with option C for the geothermal heating system and to get more information on the domestic hot water solar option, as well as the photovoltaic option, solar option, before any decision is made on solar.
And at the same time, can we have information from the MSB solar panels pulled?
That's great. Yes.
The other resource that might be helpful, Cameron, is the Dane County Office on Energy and Climate Change, and that might be a good step before, you know, engaging with a paid consultant.
I mean, maybe Kathy Coons could come to a meeting at some point.
Yeah, I think the IRA dollar grants, those are the ones that they're worth it applying for, but it's definitely a huge lift. So Heidi, thanks for the recommendation on Dane County. I'll put it on the list. And then Cindy, we can get involved too, because I know you helped out with the Monona solar field as well, Monona Grove solar field.
Heidi, you're good with the adjustments that P made on the motion for your second?
Yep.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion from board members?
Don, can I do a roll call? It's just a little bit easier on Zoom.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Dahl?
Aye.
Gage?
Aye.
Cal Nelson? Aye. Murphy?
Aye.
Stoa?
No.
Valencia?
Aye.
And Williams?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lisa. All right. I think, Chris, is it anything else on Public Works? I think that was it, but I want to make sure.
That should do it, yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, then we'll swing over to the Plan Commission. We've got 4 items to consider for the board. I'll run through a high-level overview, and then we'll get into each one if everybody's okay with that. So we met right after utilities, right after Public Works on the 12th of February. There was an overview or discuss and consider for the Heyday development. This is the precise implementation step, the second step of their plan. The general overall plan was approved almost, I think, a year ago. They came back with a number of adjustments, sizably reducing the number of units. I think they had 164 and down to 114. Went with more of a townhouse style of the project, so it's considerably changed from the original as far as the number and style. Then we had in consideration for a certified survey map for the site, breaking it up into 2 lots, one for the housing development for the townhouses and one for a commercial lot going into what will be Fundamental Way as proposed. Next, then we had an overview and discuss and consider request from the village for the potential police department building. Again, located on the northeast corner of Progress and Bonnie. And again, this was for the approval of the site itself, site plan only. Then we moved on and we talked about bees and beekeeping ordinance within the village. Aaron did a nice job of putting together a lot of different ordinances, the ins and outs of other communities that have done this. And this came about as a request from a resident. So Aaron's got some more feedback on those and is moving along to incorporate some of those changes and actually bring it back to the Plan Commission and also this board at some point in the future. That'll be next month, it looks like. Then we had a public hearing on the library parking requirements. And this is an adjustment for consideration from the zoning ordinance. And this was requested by this board or the Plan Commission. Opened that public hearing, closed it, didn't have any public comment necessarily on that one. And then discussed and considered again, this will also be in there. The Plan Commission recommended, I think it was 1 to 400 square feet or 30 stalls as a minimum for consideration for this board on that. So that was a run by of everything. Aaron, any from a highlights, anything I missed? Or Heidi?
No, I think that's a good recap, and we can get into the specific items.
All right. So the first up then is for the discuss and consider request from DBA Heyday or RC Devco for the approval of precise implementation plan for the 114 unit townhouse project located on the northeast corner of West Cottage Grove and Bus Road. I believe the applicant is here. Ryan, you guys there?
Sure. This is Ryan Swingruber from CR Devco, doing business as Heyday.
Right.
So thanks for the introduction. Just a little refresher. It is correct. We were approved for GDP back in March, end of March of 2024, followed by Village Board Trustee approval on April 1st of 2024. Over the course of the last year, we have been evaluating how to bring the project to fruition, given the difficult nature of interest rates and capital markets and getting financing. And that has guided some of the changes. So while the density and the total units have been reduced from 164 per the previous approval to 114, the overall intent and design of the site plan and the product type is largely the same. The majority of the units previously proposed were all single family attached, 2-story townhome rental units, mainly 2 and 3 bedroom, everything with a 2-car direct access garage and a 22-foot driveway apron. So everything could park 4 to 1, a low density community. Since that time, we have just reduced the number of units, thereby reducing the roadway infrastructure on the site and enhancing the site, in our opinion, increasing the green space and reducing density, requiring less private infrastructure on the site, which has made the project more feasible in today's market with construction costs. So with that said, I'm just going to touch on some high-level points that were brought up during the last Planning Commission meeting and just kind of revisit what the project is for the trustees. So first and foremost, the comprehensive plan has this designated as a planned mixed-use area number 1. We are largely consistent with the requirements of this. The main deviation from the requirements is Fundamental Way connecting to Bus Road. During those meetings for GDP, it was discussed and agreed upon that we could still provide a private connection, but we wanted to prohibit drive-by traffic and pass-through traffic going through a residential community near 2 schools, which we are forecasting a lot of parents and children will be renting from us, thereby to allow somebody to take pass-through from DB into Bus Road and traverse our community, we felt was not in the best use of extending Fundamental Way. From there, the requirement was to have a commercial component. We are meeting that requirement with a 0.42 acre commercial lot that's fronting on the corner of BB and Fundamental. We're required, based on the amount of units proposed, 114, to provide 1,140 square feet of commercial space. We've designed that out parcel that can accommodate that at a minimum with the parking. And from there, the site does, per the comp plan, allow for multifamily, and it also allows up to 15 units per acre. We're currently just at 9 units per acre, so well below that. And from a multifamily perspective, that is a broad designation, and I touched on this during Planning Commission that we really are a build for rent product. And while it is a rental, it is significantly different than a typical apartment community. A typical apartment community is 3 to 4 stories and largely 1-bedroom units. Smaller units, a more transient renter. On average, they rent from your community 1.5 years. In our community, we're looking for retention that's up to 3.5 years. These are people that are looking for missing middle housing. They're saving for future home ownership. And this is a stepping stone into home ownership by providing something that lives and feels like a single family home, but with the benefits of a rental, where you're not paying property taxes, you're not paying for snow removal, landscaping, insurance. That is all taken care of through the rent, and the responsibility of the landlord to pay the property taxes and to cover the snow removal, landscaping, and insurance. So the next slide, please. We had a little bit of commentary on the facades. These are 2 schemes of kind of a modern farmhouse, modern craftsman. The buildings will be comprised of horizontal and vertical siding. We use a CertainTeed product, board and batten, for the vertical, and for the horizontal, it's a lap siding. We use PVC trim. Next slide, please. This is a private street view of the garages. Like I said before, every unit will park 4 to 1. That reduces impervious surface by reducing the requirement of on-site surface parking. That is more common with high-density multifamily properties. So with 4 to 1 parking, we need minimal guest parking, and we can maximize the green space, which we've done in our new site plan concept. So the other discussion was, this is a gateway into the village. We recognize that. Trustee Murphy had brought up during Planning Commission that she'd like to see the incorporation of masonry or stone on the buildings that front BB and bus. Working with the architect, we have provided an example of how we would do that and highlighted the buildings where that stone would be incorporated to enhance the view and the architecture as you're entering vehicular traffic from Highway BB. Here's an example of the interiors. We are market rate, and it's all high-end finishes, consistent with kind of an entry-level custom home. 3 cm quartz, 9-foot ceilings throughout, LED lighting, dimmer switches, high-end cabinetry, which is Quest cabinets out of Milwaukee, luxury vinyl plank flooring that looks like wood for maintenance purposes, 7-foot sliders, a ton of natural light, walk-in closets in all the units. Storage is a premium when you have larger units. On average, these units will be around 1,500 square feet. They have smart thermostats, smart doorbells, and smart locks for security and safety. Lastly, every garage will be equipped with an NEMA 50 amp electrical vehicle charger outlet. So if you do have an electrical vehicle, you can charge overnight in our garages. That's standard with every single garage. So from here on the site plan, another discussion was providing future access to the Friends of the Cottage Grove Library that own this parcel, highlighted in light blue. I think another critical narrative here is that the value that we're creating for that parcel, whoever ends up buying that, if they decide to sell it or if they decide to develop it, we are putting in fundamental way, which will not only provide vehicular access, pedestrian access to the roads, curbs and gutters, sidewalks, but also sanitary and water mains will be running through that road to provide public utilities to that site. Additionally, we've agreed by running an internal traffic study with our civil engineer, Snyder Associates, that we will put in a left-hand turn lane from Highway BB and also from Bus Road, so it prevents slowdown of traffic. When you combine the cost for all these things, as well as the pedestrian crossing, now that we're having a development across the street with a commercial component, our component of residential, and potentially a future user, whatever that may be, on the Friends of the Cottage Grove Library site, you'll also require a pedestrian crossing from Shady Grove, which we've agreed to do. In total, this estimate from RG Houston, who's a local site contractor that we used at Heyday Sun Prairie, they estimate that Fundamental Way is approximately $750,000 with utilities in the roadway. The left-hand turn lanes are roughly $30,000 to $35,000. The pedestrian crossing is another $15,000 to $20,000. And there's also an existing power pole that's in place right now where Fundamental Way will be built. We're also required to move that and bury that. That's estimated to be another $35,000 to $40,000. So when you add all those costs up, we're well, approaching $900,000. So that is a cost that won't be a cost burden to the Friends of the Cottage Grove Libraries should they develop that site. And if they don't, and they decide to develop the library elsewhere and sell this parcel, we've only increased the value of the property because we've provided access and utilities, things that are critical for development. And a potential buyer will take that into account and will increase the market value of that parcel. So just a public benefit, especially to that out parcel that is currently owned by the Friends of the Cottage Grove Library. Another discussion point during Plan Commission was affordability. So there's different ways of measuring affordability. We like to use attainable housing because we are market rate. So we understand it's not true affordable. But when you look at the median sales price of homes in Dane County and Cottage Grove over the last year on average, you can see where the numbers are for home sales. Both are right around $450,000 with Cottage Grove just short of that. So when we were making the reference that our homes are more attainable and somebody can save money for eventual home ownership in Cottage Grove, when you run that analysis and assume that somebody has to put 20% down and they're borrowing 80% of the money at where mortgage rates are today, you can see the analysis of what debt service, homeowners insurance, which is required by your lender, property taxes, and repairs and maintenance. When you run that monthly cost of home ownership and compare it to the average rent at our property, you can see that we're 30% cheaper to home ownership in Cottage Grove based on the median sales prices of homes over the last 12 months. And then we're also 32% cheaper than home ownership in Dane County. Now, a lot of people can't put 20% down. A lot of people put 10%, something less, let's say 10%. So if you're taking 90% of the loan to value, you're only increasing your debt service, and now you're introducing mortgage insurance premiums. And that increases the home ownership monthly expense, which takes that to 37%. So while we understand that we are not affordable, we strongly feel that the data shows that we are attainable. And for a younger generation, Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, that are saving for future home ownership, that want to buy a home in Cottage Grove, this gives them a housing option that's not a traditional apartment, that lives differently, that provides access to the schools, and provides something that's going to feel like a home without the burden of the maintenance of the home, property taxes, insurance, snow removal, landscaping, etc. So another discussion point that we heard from the public commentary was the concern that there were too many apartments in Cottage Grove, and also that there was high vacancy. So using automated market surveys that we have through CoStar, Hello Data, John Burns Real Estate Consulting, we pull data in real time. And currently the owned housing units in the village of Cottage Grove is 86%. Rented units are 13%. To put that in perspective, the current national homeownership rate is 65%, with 35% of this country renting. Over the last 10 years, 4 multifamily projects have been built in Cottage Grove, 6 in the last 25. And so the current concern about oversupply of apartments, the data suggests that it's undersupplied, depending on what you want to use as your threshold, if we use the national average. The lease rate currently is almost 96%. So the apartment community in Cottage Grove is doing very well. And when I pulled the lease rate, it's based on the projects built over the last 25 years. The national rate for perspective purposes, you can just see is just short of 95%. And therefore the vacancy rate in Cottage Grove is 4%. So apartments are doing very well, and they're performing and providing an adequate housing option for people in the village. These are just some photos. This is Heyday Sun Prairie. It's 20 minutes north. I had mentioned during Plan Commission that the project leased up in 15 months. It's 170 rental homes. mainly 2 and 3 bedrooms. There are some ones, there's only 31s in the community. So for comparison purposes, we have 142 and 3 bedrooms. The average rent is almost comparable to what we're proposing in Cottage Grove. We have a 40-person wait list at this community, and the average age is different from a traditional multifamily community. They're in the mid 40s is our tenant base. We gravitated to Cottage Grove based on median incomes, median household values, school rankings, commute times to downtown. So we're looking for quality communities, quality schools, quality renter base. This is a photo of Haydeo Creek. It's another project, 130 rental homes. That's 20 minutes south of Milwaukee in a bedroom community just off I-94. Currently, we are 95% complete with construction. Once again, all 2 and 3 bedrooms, 4-to-1 parking, the identical finishes of the pictures I just showed you, same quality that we'll be delivering in Cottage Grove. This is 45% leased, and we're not done with construction. We're about done, but we're in the winter months and the landscaping needs to be completed, but it's leasing faster than some prairies. So to give you an idea for the demand of this type of what I would say is missing middle housing, it's townhome rentals. These 2 deals are ranch style. They're single story. The sites were bigger. They were 30 and 40 acre sites. Cottage Grove at 15 acres. We're providing a townhome product, but we also feel that's appropriate based on our market data and surveys, given the 2 schools that are adjacent and attracting a younger renter demographic that's looking to get into the school district and have the benefit of walkability to the schools. So lastly, it was discussed about the tax benefits. Number one, we're looking to have the deal either financed by Associated Bank or Johnson Financial out of Racine, Associates out of Green Bay. So it'd be a local lender, number one, for conventional financing. Horizon Construction, who's based out of East Madison, was our builder on our first 2 deals. They are going to be the builder on this deal. RG Houston, who the site work contractor was at Sun Prairie, is also bidding the deal and has helped us on the front end. Snyder Associates is a civil engineer. They're local. So we feel very strongly about hiring local consultants, looking for local lenders to benefit the local community because we're long-term holders of the real estate. And we want to make sure that we do right by the community. This is estimated to be a $35 million project that would be invested in the village of Cottage Grove. To put that in perspective, just for additional tax revenue, what that would benefit the village. So at this time, I'll be happy to take any questions. I hope I addressed some of the concerns that were brought up during Plan Commission. I know that the site plan has changed slightly from our approval a year ago, but I think it's changed for the better in terms of fewer units, a 2-acre green space in the middle, less burden on the stormwater management, detention, and infrastructure. And we are agreeing to, based upon our traffic analysis, to put in the left-hand turn lanes that were requested by Strand, as well as the pedestrian crossing to the Shady Grove development to the south. So thank you for the time to present.
Thanks, Ryan. Before we go to questions, probably just have staff give their little snippets because that may address some of your questions as well. And we'll get it all covered. Then we can kick it back to either staff or Ryan to answer any questions you guys have.
All right, thanks, John. We can just run through the approval recommendations we had. The first one, as John and Ryan pointed out, this is being approved as a PUD. So that usually happens when a project has some scale or complexity that doesn't quite fit within one of our standard zoning districts. So this is a process that allows for some variation from what would otherwise be required in the most compatible district. In this case, our MR12 multifamily district would be probably the closest to what this project would fit into. So for comparison's sake here, the MR12, you'd be required to have 50% of the site as green space. Here, lot 1 is 46% green space. So that's less than the 50. They would need that variation, but I think it is worth noting that the stormwater ponds are being pulled out as a separate outlot, so that's not adding green space to that ratio. And because this is a private street network, all of that paved area is being counted towards part of lot 1 and accounts for a lot of that impervious surface, whereas if these were public streets and public right-of-ways, they wouldn't be counting that way. Second one, the MR12 wouldn't allow more than 4 townhouse units in one assembled building. Here they're going up to 6 connected which is less than some of the buildings in the GDP, which went as far as 8 units. And then finally, obviously all 114 units here are on one lot, as opposed to having one building per lot, which would be more typical of the MR12. But again, we want, this managed and operated as one large project. I think it's easier to do that, keeping the lot as one parcel. So I think we'd recommend allowing that variation. Other approval conditions, we'd recommend considering some kind of a small tot lot type playground. The school was certainly amenable to having path connections from this project to the schools, and presumably kids would use some of the playground equipment over there, but young kids, young parents with children may not want to be doing that. That equipment may not be suitable, so just something that's more suitable to them that's part of this project, I think would be recommended. Ryan addressed some of the access issues related to the library, Friends of the Library site. Because this is happening before the referendum, we don't really know what's going to happen with that site, so we'd recommend maintaining those access requirements from the GDP. We'd like the applicant to provide an addressing plan for the project that we can review at the village level along with the fire department and EMS, just to make sure we're being as efficient as possible in wayfinding for emergency situations. Both fire and EMS did look at these plans. EMS, their main comment was just a reminder that we want to have address, number signage on both the fronts and the backs, because a lot of those, that emergency response is going to come to the back of the units, and they want to see those numbers back there. The fire department just wanted to make sure there's no parallel parking on any of the private streets to make it easier for their vehicles to get through, and that was already what's envisioned by Heyday. The fifth one, there's significant amount of grading on the commercial parcel of lot 2. We'd like to see them consider using retaining walls to potentially maximize the flatter development area of that parcel. 6 and 7, just a reminder of various fees that'll be due with the development, park improvement fees, fee in lieu of parkland dedication, and sewer and water impact fees. Number 8, just clarifying that the developer will need to provide access to Fundamental Way from the existing commercial site, and that'll be at Heyday's cost, and they need to coordinate that with the property owner and the tenant businesses and ensure that there's always access to the site. Number 9, another reminder about potential fees, this time related to the MMSD sewer district. Any annexation fees into that district that are outstanding would be passed through to the applicant. The submittal showed a couple of monument signs, just a reminder that those will need sign permits. And then obviously the commercial building, whenever that comes forward, would have to go through its own site plan approval process. I'll note this was voted down at the plan commission level by a vote of 4-3. But when the motion that they considered included another condition from the plan commission, as Ryan mentioned, just putting the stone on the facades facing the streets. So we'd recommend keeping that in place as well. The applicant's also seeking approval of the certified survey map today. Couple conditions related to that. We will still need a formal petition to vacate the northern portion of Fundamental Road. And the CSM shouldn't be recorded until the village has received and approved that. With that, I would turn it over to Josh at Strand for some of the engineering overview.
Thanks, Aaron. Overall, we had a letter with a handful of comments, a lot of them more on the general, I would say, overall engineering and detailing of the drawings. I don't know if you want to keep sharing that site thing as I go through too, so people can maybe follow along as part of it. That would be appreciated. But let's kind of start on the traffic side. We had questions and a little bit of discussion on traffic at Plan Commission. Cottage Grove Road and Bus Road, that signalized intersection, years ago when it was approved, at the time it was approved, Shady Grove, or the planning of Shady Grove, this site and as Heyday and the school, was all thought about the development as part of that location and traffic that would need to be as part of that signalized upgrade. So that was taken care of when they upgraded that the last time for the capacity needed in this area as the village continues to grow over here with some projections. We met with the team as they were discussing this, and as you remember in the past GDP submittal, it was a little bit different than this, but there was discussions about how you would access the site. Again, this is all private street now, except for Fundamental Way, in discussions with the developer and their engineer, not only right turn bays, but we also wanted some left turn bays in off the main roads, both on Cottage Grove Road and Bus Road. This gives the opportunity for the vehicle to get out of the travel way so you don't create delay. It's a safer waiting space as they make that left in. That was agreed to and discussed earlier by the developer. A crossing for pedestrians on Cottage Grove Road over to Shady Grove was also discussed and something that they're now showing and implementing as part of the project. As some other things we looked at and things we commented on were Aaron mentioned the existing site that's on Fundamental Way there and making sure that the access is put in a new access off Fundamental Way, coordinating that, making sure that we're not demolishing one of the existing access while they're creating the new one, making sure that the sewer and water and everything is run to their lot as part of this project. We talked about sidewalk connections a little bit and internal on the site and how those will connect to the multi-use path, just making sure we have clear connections for pedestrians. Also connections from Fundamental Way sidewalk onto the site, and then potential connections even in the northeastern part of their site up into the school. And I think they've had some discussions with the school district to create some sidewalk connections up on that portion of the site. Sewer and water utilities, the big push we had for this site when we first started meeting with the developer is we wanted to make sure water was extended west of their development and north. Same for sanitary sewer to plan for the future, and that is shown in their plans. They not only extended the main, but extended the mains at a little larger sizes, 12-inch, so that we can pick up future capacity to the west and to the north of this site as part of their overall layout. As far as stormwater, we had a little bit of discussion on stormwater. Stormwater's changed a little bit since the last one. A lot of that has to do with just configuration of the building, site grading, where the wet and the dry basin are located now. The wet being in blue, the dry in green basins that are shown there now. They're also in kind of the flowway of the existing kind of sanitary sewer, or sorry, storm sewer on the site. So the library site and even a little bit east and north of the library site drains this direction. We had some discussion there to see if they could try to separate the flow through in the pond because they're taking some offsite water in through here. This is probably the most economical way to deal with the stormwater on their sense. As you know, they talked about other costs that they're putting into this development. They position this as an outlot, and the big reason for an outlot is it won't only be used for their site, so it won't just be a Heyday development. They'll have public fundamental street water that runs to these ponds. They'll have the commercial development that they ultimately will sell off that will run to these ponds. And then the overflow water that's already coming through this site and then drains across Cottage Grove Road and down in through Shady Grove will also be going through this outlot. So they're proposing it as an outlot. They're proposing to turn these two basins along with Fundamental Way over to the village for village maintenance in the future and village ownership. The same thing with sewer and water through their site. So sewer and water as it runs through their site and serves the building. There's easements on that for both the sewer and the water so that the village can own them and maintain them in the future. Got a little bit of comments also on just the photometrics of the site and the lighting and making sure that we show lighting on Fundamental Way as part of the project. That lighting needs to be separate from the Heyday again because there'll be kind of public lighting and private lighting as part of their final submittal. That's all. Those are the bigger comments I sort of had as part of the letter. A lot of the other stuff is a little bit smaller and a little bit more finite, just detailing as they finalize plans. Is there any questions?
So Josh, I got a question. So talking about traffic on Cottage Grove Road going westbound. So if you're going westbound, turning left, I mean, people do that, and that's an issue, that entrance into Shady Grove prior to the controlled intersection. There's a little triangular wedge to try to keep people from turning left going west, but people do it. So is there any plans to address that safety issue as a part of this?
So people going west, so you're saying address the Shady Grove issue, not necessarily their development.
Well, if we're going to be dealing with this traffic in this area, I think it should be addressed. When people are going westbound, they'll turn left into the Shady Grove around basically that little triangle that's intended to keep people from turning left into there.
Yeah.
I've
It
seen
kind of
it.
creates a
unsafe.
situation, right?
That's a bad situation right there.
Yeah.
So there is no left turn lane there coming the other direction.
Yeah, you see the striped, the kind of the striped gore lane that they're
It's an
showing there
administrative
now.
control. People are still going to turn left there.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to right now, and they do. So if we're going to address it, we address it.
But is that
Yeah,
beyond the scope of the discussion tonight? Because this is
No, it's not. You have a safety concern and you're changing this intersection completely and you're ignoring a pre-existing condition.
So to answer Peter's question, yeah, I can understand how some people, even coming out of there, right? Instead they're supposed to turn right coming out. I bet you some people want to turn left and they make a quick left turn, right? If the traffic's there.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
But that doesn't,
it's
I was just curious about the left turn lane coming in there and what we do with that triangular piece, which is a ineffective administrative control that basically increases the safety condition there, or the safety concerns.
Yeah, so we wouldn't, as what Hayday's proposing now, we wouldn't, just so everybody knows, we wouldn't be adding that same triangle on the north side and it being a right in, right out. In this case, they would have a left turn bay that you can zoom into that maybe just a little bit more on my screen.
If you're coming from the west heading east, I see the left turn lane. So what the Hayday piece is, I like that. It's good. But
yeah, I mean, that's the appropriate way to address it. So if you were to try to solve if you were trying to take out that potential for a left turn and that safety concern that you're talking about, is you would take out that island and you would allow Fundamental Way South to be a full intersection, and you would add the same left turn bay where that gore striping is. So that hatched striping, that's the 11-foot lane, would turn into a left turn bay, so you could turn into there. You know,
and I agree, it's not part of the Hayday project, but it's part of, you know, what we as the village board need to address as it relates to pre-existing safety concerns when we're going in and doing the work. The right time to do it is when this work is done, and how it's split up. And that's really not my concern at this point. Is just what would we do and what would it look like? You see what I'm talking about, Josh, right?
Totally see it. That's what we're trying to avoid on the north end. That's one of the main reasons to put the left in, and yeah, but I totally see where you're going there.
Okay, and I think
So
that kind of
we can push this back to, I think, Public Works, perhaps.
I would like to do that.
That's a good comment, John. Maybe it goes back to Public Works and we talk about what the overall, if we're going to do something at the intersection, Peter, what's the overall solution, and then work with the Hayday team on that.
On how you divide it up, right?
Yeah, right.
All right, are there other questions from board members or comments?
Yeah, I'll just go down the questions I got since we started. So the original PIP had buildings running north, south, east, west. So the site plan as it relates to the building has changed completely. And the concern that when you look at that site plan right there, we've got almost a 2-acre green space that has absolutely no sight lines to BB and bus road. So there really isn't any way for law enforcement to be able to patrol and keep an eye on things per se. Now, again, I know law enforcement looked at it. I personally look at it and I see an area where you've got pretty high density with really no sight lines. It's almost like a castle, if you will, of area that's really out of sight. So I've got a concern with the PIP as it relates to what was approved and what we've put into the GDP, because it's completely different, right? And I understand there's elements of this that I like, and certainly I think there's a lot of good things, but I don't know what the right solutions are. I'm very concerned with that, and I think that needs to go back as well, John. Okay, I'll just keep going and we can circle back.
Okay.
So when I look at that, is that where the tot lot, or is it just going to be a 2-acre green space, or what is the plan for that?
It's a 2-acre green space to be used by the community, whether your kids are out there or you have a pet.
It's just the lawn.
Correct.
It's just lawn. Okay. So I guess kind of going along the pet thing. So as far as pet allowances, I think the does it allow 3 or 2 dogs per unit? And I guess, is there any?
Three pets per unit. There are breed restrictions, weight restrictions. You have to have a pet deposit. If the unit got damaged, and you pay pet rent, which encourages the resident to make sure that the pet, is.
Got it. Are there going to be any like dog poop stations where you've got bags and places to throw garbage, or is it just going to kind of be haphazard?
We put dog poop stations throughout, and we also use a system called Doggy DNA. And what that is they test the DNA. If we find your dog's poop on the property, you get a warning. The second time, you pay a fine. It also encourages the residents to make sure that the grounds are well kept.
That's fantastic. Thank you. That's great. I did talk with Aaron about that outlot too. So that outlot too, the cost to maintain is going to go to the village then, right? Because that's going to be public lands at that point. Is that my understanding, Josh and Aaron?
That outlot 2 or is it outlot 1? Is that you're talking the ones
It's
with the
outlot
basins?
1.
Peter?
I'm sorry. You're right.
Yep.
It's outlot 1, right?
Yeah, correct. That would be public outlot.
Okay. So as far as if that belongs to us, and you've got the buildings, if you look at that drawing, the buildings that are on the southwest corner, the sidewalk is really close, and you look at the grades, it's pretty steep down into that pond. I guess if that comes to us, what kind of liability does the village take if there's any sort of injuries or situation arising from the proximity of that pond to the residential units? If kids are playing there and a kid goes down in there and drowns, is there a liability that falls to the village, or do we need to do something, or it's just very concerning how close it is to a sidewalk?
This is Larry. That sounds like a good question for me, Peter.
Okay.
The village's liability is limited as a municipality. For legislative decisions, we enjoy full immunity. For ministerial decisions or actions that we fail to take, there's a $50,000 cap. And so I would say in this case, first of all, there has to be some negligence for the village for someone to even tap into that 50,000. So, I'm thinking through scenarios where the village might be negligent in, was there a broken piece of sidewalk? First, someone could clarify for me, the sidewalk is going to still be within the heyday parcel. So, even if there was some issues there with respect to the sidewalk, that doesn't fall on the village. If someone were to stumble off the sidewalk and into the pond or something like that, or down that hill. So it's fairly limited and not really any different than would be the case for any other stormwater pond that happens to be owned by the village or any other village properties, parks, things like that. It's going to be very similar. There are quite a few communities that use their stormwater ponds as public space and allow people to access those.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so I think you just kind of lump it together with all the things the village manages and controls.
So you're not concerned. Okay, next question.
I'm not,
So Josh, you talked about that the stormwater system within the Heyday property would at some point, you said something about the village taking over and maintaining. My assumption would be that all of the basins and all the filters would be part of a maintenance agreement that would be associated with that parcel when it's complete, not the village.
Of the outlot 1, you're saying, Peter?
No. Lot 1, all the maintenance of the stormwater system that drains into this pond, that's not on this village. You said something about the village eventually taking that over or something. I didn't follow that exactly.
Okay. So yeah, it's a good clarifying question. All the stuff that flows from the Heyday site to these ponds,
Yep.
so their stormwater system, that's all theirs. That's private.
So
The
maintaining
ponds
filters and,
themselves.
and doing all the maintenance, that's okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. The ponds themselves, let's say the ponds get over time, right?
Yep.
You may have to dredge a pond, or
Yep.
the infiltration basin isn't filtering or isn't, dry after 24 hours or 48 hours after a storm. You may have to maintain those. Those would be on your public outlot. But the systems running to them are not the maintenance of the village. That would be Hayday's
Okay,
maintenance on their
perfect.
site.
That clarifies it. And that will be part of, there'll be a recorded document to the property as far as the maintenance agreement, right?
Yeah, as far as their own maintenance systems, yeah.
Okay. The next question I had is, when I look at, the commercial unit, so I know that the GDA was approved with that kind of appendage, if you will. When I look at the comp plan, it talks about carefully designed blend of commercial and multifamily resident. I don't think it's carefully designed blend. I really don't like it, but it is what it is, and we need to move forward. The one thing I would say is I think during Plan Commission, Hada had said they had some interest in that. That's great. I think if that can happen right away. But what I think is a condition we need to enforce is I don't want a half-acre lot of weeds growing up. We've had, right along BB down where New Tech is now, that's been just a big hayfield for 25 years since I moved here. So what I would say is, as a condition of this, that needs to be maintained as a residential lawn and mowed and maintained as such until it's developed. And hopefully it gets developed quickly because they said they had somebody, but I think that's more than reasonable request because we've seen commercial developments take a long, long time. And when you're talking about a small site like that, it could be decades.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And it's our front door to the community. So the last thing I'm going to have is weeds or overgrowth that's going to be visibly like a deterrent or just not aesthetically pleasing. So at Sun Prairie, we have 12 single family outlots that were required on our approval. We maintain those lots and we mow them. So until somebody develops those lots or develops a commercial parcel, it would be on me to make sure that it looks it's maintained and it's to my benefit as well. So
Yep,
I'm
absolutely.
managing 16 acres. So
it's mutually beneficial, but it's just a condition that I think is critical for us as we move forward here because of hopefully it gets developed right away. But I mean, we've seen other places that take a long time. Okay, the next question is on garbage collection. So I understand that this is going to be paid for by the developer, and you're gonna provide garbage cans like the village does. Is that how garbage is going to be managed?
it'll be no different than a single family home. The garage is designed for the recycling bin and the garbage to be stored internally. And that's per the lease. So you don't have animals or just visibly garbage on your private streets. When the trash day comes, they roll it out, it gets picked up, and then they roll them back in.
Okay, so here's my question. When I looked at the layout and I look at the garages, they're 21.7 by 21. Is there a special enclave that I'm missing where those garbage cans go? Because my concern is obviously if it doesn't fit in there, the easy button is just set them outside and let them, and then it's just going to look crappy for everybody. I think it's bad for you as a developer. It's bad for the village in terms of a gateway. I mean, this is the gateway as you come in off BB.
So these garages are the same size as the ones that we have at both Sun Prairie and Oak Creek. We have the exact same system, and we do not allow people to store their garbage cans outside. We haven't had any issue with people finding a way to fit the garbage cans in their garages.
Okay,
prohibited for the lease. So
it will be enforced that they will not be allowed outside. To be
Yep.
stored outside. Okay, very good. Thank you. Let's see. So the next question that I had, we talked a little bit about it. The BB traffic dealing with the Shady Grove. So that's a separate question. But the other question I had is a lot of the language in here talking about access to the private part of Fundamental Way refers to the library of the Friends. If the referendum gets approved, we will not be using this site, or it most likely will not be used for the Friends. So I think the question that I would have, maybe it's to Aaron or you guys, the developers, if this lot gets sold, we want to make sure that it has a lot of value for the Friends, right? As we're talking about what it would generate. So we want to make sure, and I'm just recommending maybe that language is changed somehow to reflect future use versus just the library site.
So the cul-de-sac there still is accessible then to that site, no matter who owns it. The point of having the private drive with the conditions for the library are so that it serves both the main entrance to the library off where you're drawing it, and then also the secondary access point for the staff. It was for a staff and like a book deposit drop-off deliveries.
I think the one access off the cul-de-sac should be fine for most applications. I was just thinking the language in there is really limited. If it's a library, it has access to the private part of Fundamental Way. Otherwise, you know, it's just off the cul-de-sac, which is probably adequate.
That's
I'm just bringing
correct.
that up as it's a conditional access that's only allowed for the library application, which is fine. I mean, I guess I'm asking the rest of the board if they feel that that land needs that.
That did come up at Plan Commission, and Larry can jump in on this, but at that meeting, Rick thought it was a little bit of a gray area to require a private landowner to provide another access to another private landowner if that parcel gets sold.
Okay.
It's a little different than providing it to the
Public
village
road.
for a library, but Larry, if you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, you know, there's a lot of this is give and take with a developer, right? And there's been a lot of discussion about that particular aspect. And I do agree that the access that's provided here to this lot is likely sufficient to meet the test of whether or not we can, well, let's put it this way, the test of whether we can require more than this. I think it's gray, but likely that we can't require that additional access.
The only access would be if it's a library.
I think that was agreed to as part of the GDP process.
GDP, correct.
Yeah,
right.
and
to the private portion of it.
To the private portion, right? So they're no matter who has the lot, they'll have access to the cul-de-sac. But if it was a library lot, I think that that was something that was part of the give and take in in that previous round.
Okay.
It was extensively discussed during spring break last year.
Okay, the last question that I had was, this goes back to comp plan, and it talks about, well, there's two pieces to this question. One is, and it goes back to, I think you highlighted it, that because this is a gateway, we should feature a mix of high quality commercial development. And it goes on to talk about the high standards, requiring high standards for design and materials, which I think is really important. When you highlight that, you only had the first building. I think it should really include the everything visible from BB and bus. This is a gateway. This is supposed to have this high quality look. And I'll be honest with you, vinyl look, even though you have vertical and horizontal, it's just a vinyl shell. I think it looks kind of cheap, and I think creating that kind of L visible is absolutely critical.
I'm sorry, didn't Heidi already add that as a condition?
She did, but what they came back with was the 4 buildings along Cottage Grove Road and the first building coming up bus. That was it. When I looked at the drawing that was shown previously.
So you're just asking that we include this one building?
All the buildings along bus, all the buildings along BB.
It's 2 buildings. It's those 2, yes.
Got it. So you're saying all of these 2 as well?
No, I think if you include the ones that are facing bus, the ones that are going horizontally or east-west on the north side of the property, I think those are fine. Those face the school. So you got 3 buildings along bus, 4 buildings along BB. And my only other question then goes back to that rental office. When I look at the renderings of it, it's pretty plain Jane. It looks like just a shack. I think there's certainly work that should be done on that in the sense that this is a gateway, and you got, I don't know if you've got that drawing. I've got it here. It looks.
Yeah, I mean, it's that building is all the way up here.
I know, but when you look at the renderings of it, It's a vinyl building. It just looks cheesy. It's got that open airway for the, I think that that one needs a little bit of work in terms of the aesthetics. If indeed we're gonna follow what the comp plan is talking about, and this area here kind of follows that, is it's a gateway location requiring high standards for design and materials. Well, that rental office looks like a shack.
This has a metal seam roof, number one, which is an upgrade from asphalt shingles. And if it requires some additional stone, we've done that on the project. We're fine with that.
Okay, that's perfect. That would look great. So other than that, I didn't have any other questions for the group. I think that the two that we talked about is three. One is the visual sightlines. We gotta have some rework done on that layout for public safety and visual lines of sight into a 2-acre area. And then the second thing that I would make a motion is that we update the documents to reflect that the commercial outlot 2 or lot 2 must be maintained as, and it sounds like you guys were gonna do that anyway. And then the last thing is defining which buildings need to have the visual improvements. I mean, obviously, I'd like to see the whole thing, but I understand the trade-offs there. I think the ones that are visible to as you come in are the critical ones.
We're facing BB and the 3 that are facing bus.
3 that are facing bus, the 4 that are facing BB, and
the leasing office.
And the leasing office, correct.
Can we get
Questions
Chief
on the
to weigh in on the sightlines thing?
I was going to
So
ask
it's
the
an issue.
developer a question on that. Might be what you're thinking too. I don't know. So it looks like the gaps between the buildings aren't quite lined up. I don't know if there's a way to tweak that a little bit so they're lined up so you can see it's not, you know, it's a couple of small points, I get, but at least it would go through.
This is a site plan concept, but number one, there will be building lighting and sconces to light that area, and we will have some supplemental lighting going around the sidewalks. So in terms of safety, I mean, we have a 5-acre interior park at Sun Prairie, and we haven't had any issues with it because we do have the front porches and the front doors are facing the space. But I think there's some opportunity. I don't want to reinvent the site plan because we've been at this for a year, but there's 4 buildings that are along I can't see the road right now zoomed in, but the 2 that are facing the wet pond, seems to me that there's an opportunity that those buildings could shift slightly to the northeast, 2 of those buildings, and thereby providing a little better sight line into the interior of lot 1 from BB. I guess what I'm saying is I am more than happy to evaluate increasing visibility and lighting in there for a safety standpoint. What I want to prevent is going back and redesigning the site because we've been at it a year.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first, but again, this is the first time we've seen it since the GDP, right? So at least certainly myself and what was approved in the GDP was significantly different than what we're looking at here, right? And you know, the concern that I would have is, you know, you've got this castle type protected, you can't really see what's going on in there, and at the end of the day, if we're patrolling, you cannot really see activity, right? So here you are. It's brand new, it's fine, 5, 10, 15. At some point, as rental properties age, that design feature becomes a public safety issue.
It's controlling if they enter through fundamental, right? There's going to be, as they enter the community, there's a clear, direct visibility into that area.
Well, you get like a narrow little swath as you come in off Fundamental Way, but as you drive around, it's very, very protected in terms of visibility.
Is Chief on that he might be able to speak to this?
Yes, I am here. Looking at this layout, you're speaking to lot 1 being a green space, basically an open field that's maintained as a backyard. That's the way I view it. There's ample walk paths and walkways around. Besides driving through, I envision that the officers, just as they do any of our other localities, are going to do foot patrols in the area also. So
they're going to need to do
and they're going to be accessible for bicycle patrol. This design configuration, as it sits right now, if there's a slight shift with the one set of buildings, it's fine. If there isn't, it's still, we still have view in there. We still can see what's going on, especially if they're talking about putting the lighting situation in there, as with any of our facilities, village or not.
Yeah,
there's also,
Keith,
I'd like to-
I'm a little more concerned, I think, than you are. When you look at it from the street, you can't see anything, right? If you do an isometric and you do it like a SolidWorks, you're not going to be able to see into that outlet. With light, that's great. Yeah, I totally agree with you. Light is great. But at the end of the day, if there's suspicious activity, it's not going to be easy to patrol. And if you're committed to having officers go in there and walk around and patrol, then I guess it's less of an issue. But I don't see that as something we're going to do regularly. So I just think the design is not optimal for public safety.
But Chief Gary just said it was. This is not a concern for me.
I'd also state that there's 40, I think it's 42 or 46 residences with front doors out onto that space as well. So it's not like a hidden space at all.
And smart doorbells. So like those have cameras and we provide provisions for all that. Electrical, low voltage.
Will the camera video be accessible by the Cottage Grove Police Department if needed?
That'll be up to the individual residents.
Is there any way to make a change to make that available just to the Cottage Grove Police Department?
We've worked collaboratively with residents for accessing video Ring doorbells, and I'm not promoting Ring, but just again for that accessibility. So again, that's dependent on the renters, the owners, and working out those type of partnerships, which are easily done on a daily basis.
Yeah, I would also say that the market's going to dictate this. If we have any issues on this property and residents have an issue, I won't be able to rent units and I'll have a problem in terms of reviews, safety, et cetera. And we'll do whatever is necessary in cooperation with the village to make sure that it's addressed. I think that as a starting point right now, given the chief's feedback and the fact that we're going to well light this thing and have a photometric approved and have 40 eyes on it at all times, I think it's sufficient as designed. And if there is an issue, you can be assured that we'll be working with the village. But in our portfolio, we've not had an issue, and we regularly implement these garden courtyards as we like to market them. The term is used as backyard. We look at them as a front yard because in the rental community, you typically don't have a green space. You just look out at a sea of parking. And this is an exterior amenity to our residents that we have at our other existing communities. And to date, we haven't experienced a problem with those being private green spaces that we manage and make sure that they're well maintained and also secure and well lit spaces.
Is there a motion on the table or no?
Not yet, Cindy.
Okay, can I make a motion?
I also saw Heidi's hand up, so I just wanted to put it there.
Oh, no, you can go ahead, Cindy. My question was answered in that discussion. Thank you.
I'll move to approve the request from CR Debco DBA Heyday for the approval of a precise implementation plan for a 114 unit townhouse project on parcel number 0711-082-8670-1 located on the northeast corner of West Cottage Grove Road and Bus Road with staff conditions.
Second.
Okay, and just to clarify, there was discussion on the board about some additional specifying which buildings have the additional stone. Is that part of that too or no? Cindy, I just want to clarify.
I know that the Plan Commission's recommendation was to include the stone facade, but beyond, I guess maybe I need a little clarification on what the recommendation was from Trustee Dahl tonight.
One of the other things we could do, if I can jump in, is, we've still got a development agreement to finish for this. And I think what might help is for us to capture some of these items in that. Since it just is a suggestion. So we've got a list of things, the maintenance of the non-residential lot, the stone facade, those sorts of things. And that might also give the developer some time to take a look at some of these sight lines. I'm looking at this and it looks like there is a sight line in at the driveway from bus that, where you could see through, if I'm looking at it correctly. It looks like there's a sight line through just south of that also where a sidewalk goes out to the road, and then there's a space between the buildings, and there was the talk of maybe some realignment. So we could seek some alterations and just as a signal that you can send to me and to the developer as to what we should work on in the development agreement too.
I'll just add, requiring turf on the commercial lot is something we've done before. We required that of steel, for example. The initial building was fairly small given the size of that lot, and they were planning to expand, and until they did, they had to keep grass there. So
I would second trustee Kel Nelson's motion.
All right, thank you both. With that, then, any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd just like to be clear. I mean, at Plan Commission, we talked about stonework, but we weren't specific as it relates to how the comp plan feeds into this. And I would add to that motion that stonework is added to the 3 buildings running north-south facing bus, the 4 buildings running sort of east-west and east-west, and it runs sort of northeast-southwest along the pond, those 4 buildings, and the rental office, that those offices would be accented with stone. And then, of course, the maintaining the outlot as a residential type, maintain green space until the commercial property is developed.
Yeah, and I think, Pete, the comment that Larry made is we cover that in the developer's agreement to specify.
Yeah, in particular, when we're talking about sight lines, I think that one, John, I think would be good for us to just allow some time and thought on, and we can, obviously the board will be back in the saddle on approving that DA, and we could present something at that point. The other things that were just mentioned are just as easily done now as in the DA. We can do it either way.
That's my point.
I like the idea of the stonework on all of the buildings, just for the consistency. So all the buildings I see on bus have the stone, and all the ones on Cottage Grove Road. Is there interest in adding that to the motion? The stonework on those 4, so 7 buildings total plus the rental office.
I can amend my motion to include that and the maintenance of the commercial lot.
All right.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Heidi.
I do have another
Go ahead.
question. I'm just curious, how do you keep the streets private when you say they're private? What would keep me from doodling around over there in my car if I don't live there?
Nothing.
Okay, just wanted to know if there was something
When we say
special.
private, we have to maintain them, and we're building them and we're maintaining them. So plowing them, resurfacing them, preparing curbs and gutters and sidewalks, etc.
Got it. Thank you.
And
And
the
we're
other
also
thing that
responsible for
adds to
snow
that,
removal.
the other thing that adds to that, Sarah, is that they're just designed in a way that it's not convenient to use to get from one place to another.
Yep, no, I get that. I just was envisioning some sort of arm with a security badge or something, but no, not.
Pedestrian crossing across BB, we're encouraging people that don't want to, specifically kids that don't want to use the 10-foot multi-use path that we're building along bus or BB because it's highly trafficked. If they want to traverse our community and use the sidewalks, there will be connectivity to the northeast corner of the site. We've been in discussions with the school to the north about creating, getting a construction easement and then connecting our sidewalk to theirs, so then people can go internally. That doesn't mean they have to live in the community. If they're living in the Shady Grove community of the south, they'll be able to do that.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. That was it. That's my only question.
All right, any other discussion on this? We have motion second.
Don, can we do a roll call?
Yes, we can. That was
Thank
my
you.
next thing.
Thank
Please.
you. Williams,
Aye.
Valencia,
Aye.
Stoa,
Yes.
Murphy,
Aye.
Kel Nelson,
Aye.
Gage,
Aye.
and Dahl.
Nay.
Thank
All
you.
right, motion passes. With that, then the next item consideration was, as we've been talking through this, is consideration of a certified survey map on these on these one parcel to make them two parcels. Aaron, I don't know if you need to add any clarification to that or not.
No, just adding the conditions that were in my report, and I believe Strand had some that pertain to the CSM as well. Mine were related to the formal petition to vacate that portion of fundamental land.
So I'll make a motion to approve the request from CR Devco with DBA Heyday for the approval of a certified survey map to split parcel number 0711-082-8670-1 into 2 lots and 1 outlot with staff recommendations.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second then. Any other discussion on this one?
Just for the record, I'll say I wasn't involved when the original GDP was put together, and I think the integration of that into the development is, we're just checking a box. I think it's horrible. So, I mean, I understand it was approved in the GDP is what it is. So, I mean, just for the record, I just want to express that.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion or comments? And I was going to say, and then we'll have Lisa do the roll call.
Murphy,
Aye.
Stoa,
Yes.
Valencia,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Kel Nelson,
Aye.
Gage,
Aye.
and Dahl.
Nay.
All right, that motion carries. Next, then we move on to the village as the applicant, and this is in regards to the proposed police station at the corner of Progress and Bonnie Road. So we've got Mike here. I know that from the architect, and I know that Aaron has some items too. So
Great, thank you. So the the project site, as you see on the screen, is just to the west of the current MSB site. Recently, these two sites got a CSM that joined the whole properties once together. Oh no.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, of all times.
Your PC's tired.
It got tired. Sorry. I'll try to talk and get this fixed.
Barcelona.
Okay, so I will, once I'm trying to get this done of all timing here, but so just give you kind of understanding where we are with the project is that we are at DDs. We just finished up design development stage. We are now, we had an estimate completed at that time. And right now the estimate is below what has been budgeted. Sorry, it's going terrible.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah.
This is Tim Meeker at JDR. If possible, I could share my screen. I think I've got the information that you have.
Yeah, I think I got back. Sorry.
You got it back? Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Technology is not my friend here. So yes, so we are at DDs. Kind of our next step would be is to move on to construction documents, and those construction documents lead into bidding here in the summer if going with the plan. So the building currently remains, it's a one-story building. You can see it's 27,800 square feet. You can see from the plan, it's orientated different on plan, but in the blue still remains the public space, the lobby and the public meeting room. In the red onto the left is the secure area that heads to the north. Oh my God. Okay, well, things are just not going my way here today. Sorry, folks. My apologies. Well, Tim, maybe you could please bring up your screen. Looks like I'm having
I sure can.
at work.
Okay, let me see here if I can share. Okay, bear with me for 1 second. Okay, can people see my screen?
Nice job,
Yes.
Tom. Yes, we can.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll catch up to you, Mike.
All right, just the next slide, please.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. So it's a little bit out of order. So, so this is the site plan. So we have two access points off Bonnie Road. The lower left-hand corner is access to the public parking where we have 12 stalls. The other access point to the north has two what we deem semi-private stalls, and that also heads into the secure parking area. The orange outlined space is a secure fence that happens around and attaches back to the building through there. We have a secure gate on the west side, and we also have a secure gate on the east side. The east side gate creates a double access point for the police, but the majority of the vehicles will probably enter on and off of Bonnie Street. On the exterior, we have two enclosures. Right up to the top, we have a trash enclosure. And then down to the right on the outside of the building is where we have an enclosure that'll be screened that encompasses the generator for the building, a full building generator. That screen there is then incorporated into the fence that kind of gives a backdrop to our unprogrammed green space below. If you can shift up a little bit, let me see to the front. Yeah. So we see we have a major sidewalk that's coming up to the front of the building off of Progress Drive. To the right of that, we have a little bit of a outdoor concrete space that extends out, and that's really kind of an extension of the public community room that allow itself to kind of come out. Next slide, please. So this is a photometrics. It's a little bit small, but what I went through and kind of highlighted in the yellow, those are all 20-foot lighting fixtures that are there to light all the parking stalls and the drives. The orange dots are more path lighting to help accentuate the landscape and the walkways through there. We have a little bit of lighting on the bottom in the light blue that is off the face of the building. And then we'll have some lighting that's underneath all the canopies for entrance, and that's mostly for egress. So all of these are dark sky compliant and currently kind of meeting all of our photometrics for the site itself. Next screen, please. Landscaping for the building. So we have a lot of landscaping that kind of focuses around the building itself. The green areas that we have there are more kind of prairie grasses. So they are very low maintenance there, but it kind of creates a buffer zone from the sidewalk up to the police area, up to the building itself. We have left the space to the right, kind of a open lawn space. We added landscaping to the backside of the MSB just to help screen some of the disconnects and the panels that they have on the existing building, but we're kind of leaving that space open so that it can be continued programmable space for the village itself. Next screen, please. You can skip this one. I rearranged it on mine. So again, this is a one-story building. The materials that we have on here is a mixture of brick and CMU and a little bit of the metal panel that both front Progress Street and Bonnie Road. On the lower photo, we are mixing up materials a little bit more. We have a little bit more of the split face CMU, and we have another type of metal panel that's on the back side of the building. The candy cane or the circle is a metal panel system that we have, and then we have some curved glass, and the shape of the glass creates a clear story that we wrap in, and with one-story buildings to get more additional light inside the building is why we created this clear story. This will be made with Solera glass, which is basically kind of a translucent glass that, or a frosted glass, so to speak, that helps to distribute the sunlight a little bit deeper into the space. Next slide, please. So just a little bit on the signage of the building. So we have a couple areas where we're looking at signage. So along the south or the front, we're going to have illuminated signage. So the letters themselves will be lit, and they'll be slightly backlit on that side as well. So that's a little bit more on the calling card or the face of the building. Next slide, please. And along Bonnie Road, we have some additional signage towards the back of the building, one facing Bonnie Road and one facing on the backside of that. In our proposal, we had looked to do some monumental signs that come into both of the parking areas through there. But upon some of our estimates, we're kind of rethinking that and understanding that it may not be a good use of the money. So that's something that we're still debating and maybe not going to suggest at this point. And the rest of the slides really were addressed into the sustainable part of things. So any questions? I apologize for the technical difficulties, but kind of helped me rush through this a little bit.
So Mike, on slides 7 and 8, where you got signage.
Yeah.
At nighttime, when it's dark and no signs are lit, that'll look great. But is there a better way to get some contrast between the light colored brick and the light lettering that's on the, it just doesn't have the contrast I would expect.
During the day, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we can do some sampling and figure out what that may just be in that sense. And whether, you know, if it's just a pure acrylic, clear acrylic that's in there, or is it a different color that is produced at that point? So
I mean, at night when it's lit, it's going to look great, but when it's light lettering on light brick, it just doesn't have a good contrast.
Yeah, I mean the outside shell of those are actually stainless steel, or you know, brushed aluminum, I guess at that point. So just the facing would be the illuminated part. So I do think that you'll get some shine with that as well.
I think that's a good point by Peter, because I look at like the Granite Ridge sign that's like black lettering on dark gray.
Not great.
Yeah, it doesn't look good. So if you have something that would be more of a contrast, that would be
okay.
better.
Yeah, we can definitely look into that.
We could always change back to the cool colors that was originally presented. That's my favorite, and I prefer that, but I know that the public like this, so. It was kind of a joke.
Oh.
Thanks, Cindy. We need a little levity.
Out tonight. I think this looks very nice.
Agreed.
We are working on better, some updated renderings. Just haven't got it there, but for the public information meeting, that's what we're targeting to get those out. A lot of wheels in motion.
Are there other questions for Mike or Chief, or as long as we have everybody?
I guess I have a question about the street parking and pedestrian access. If, you know, you're having, I don't know, something that requires some overflow parking. So there's probably no parking between the driveway for the public access and the corner of Progress and Bonnie, is that right? So the driveway on Bonnie Road for the public access down to the intersection of Progress.
Yeah,
There's
when we
probably no parking on the street between there, so everyone would park back north of the driveway if they were parking on the street to go to an event. So then they would access that sidewalk that would walk along. the public access parking lot to go in the front door. Is that kind of the flow of overflow parking? And then if you parked on Progress Drive, you would come up from the east and walk along the sidewalk and go in the front door. Those would be kind of the two
Yeah.
public
If
overflow
it's an evening
walking
or
paths.
weekend event, wouldn't you have availability to park at MSB, that parking lot?
You could park there too, yeah, and then walk along the sidewalk too. Those would be kind of our overflow parking options, just to
We
want to
had,
make sure there's pedestrian access easily for, you know, people that may park farther away.
Absolutely.
Heidi, we had done a little research on parking along Progress Drive, and I had it all ready to fire and show you, but we see how that goes. We had determined along the front of it up to the MSB, you could get 12 to 13 cars that could park on Progress Drive, and due to the width of it, you could actually get parking on street across that as well.
So both sides of the street, so you get 20 plus cars.
I'm sorry.
So you could park on both sides of the street? And
Yeah,
get
with the width of it.
more than 20 then in that same space.
Correct. But Bonnie Road is considerably smaller than Progress Drive.
Yep.
So we weren't planning on being able to get any on that street on street parking.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? And again, this is just considering the site plan for tonight for this.
I'll make a motion that we approve the request from the Village of Cottage Grove Police Department for approval of the site plan as presented.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
I don't know
Sorry.
who was first.
I'll take
Yes.
it.
Okay, there you go, Lean. All right, any other discussion then on that?
I have a question. So it's a site plan approval tonight, and then in the future, there will be approval of the money, finances?
Yeah,
Or-
we'll have to have a formal budget and everything from, basically we'll be approving the RFP, you know, one of those that respond to that.
Do we know when that's gonna be?
Don't
The bidding would
Go ahead.
be this, I believe this summer.
Yeah, if just so I understand, but you know, what we are currently on schedule is to have the bid documents ready by June 1st. We will have another what they call a CD estimate done prior to that, prior to it goes to bid, to make sure that we are remaining on budget as planned. Then we intend, if everything goes smooth, that we put them out to bid in beginning of June. Bidding usually takes 4 weeks to do, and that's when you know, final bids are due at that point.
So there would be, to answer your question, Chris, that there would be a board decision regarding authorization to award a bid to a lowest responsible bidder. And then there would be a subsequent approval for borrowing once we know what the amount is.
Okay.
Any other discussion on this?
Can we do a roll call on this one too, John?
Yes, please.
All right, Gage,
Aye.
Noah,
No.
Dahl,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Cal Nelson,
Aye.
Valencia,
Aye.
and Murphy.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Lisa. Motion carries. Next then, the discuss and consider amending the zoning ordinance related to the library parking. We've talked about this a few times already. I think I said earlier, Plan Commission recommended, I think it was 1 to 400 feet. Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong. And which would be for the current library or would be a minimum of 30 stalls.
That's
Is that right, Aaron?
That was what they recommended. That's what's in the
Yeah.
draft ordinance. That's
Right. It's slightly different than what you put together, but again, this is consideration for this board. It's just a recommendation from plan.
So my recommendation for the board is to consider a 1 to 500. That's what the staff recommended. That's what the architect recommended. That's what the library facility subcommittee recommended. It's ultimately what the library board recommended. It's also minimum parking.
So
Yes.
Plan Commission recommended 400, Aaron?
yes.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, as you look at that spreadsheet you put together, and you know, there's a variation from municipality to municipality. The average was about 400. So, you know, I guess I would make a motion to go with the recommendation from Plan Commission of the 400 spaces, or one space for every 400 square feet.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Thank you, Heidi. With that, any other discussion?
When playing, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead. You go.
Okay, I just was wondering if there couldn't be some language in the ordinance that spoke to a minimum if there is street parking available versus not. So with the variation among the communities, there's different access to street parking, I think, in the various comparables. And so I wonder if the ordinance could say something like 1 to 500 square feet if there is street park, ample street parking, and 1 to 250 if there's
None.
not, or something to that effect. Just wondering if there was any consideration or discussion on that.
Like that?
There wasn't Sarah at Plan Commission, certainly. But it's certainly it's an ordinance. We can craft it however this board wants to craft it.
I guess I think for me, the concern of having a site that doesn't have street parking and then doesn't have much overflow is a concern, though I understand it's a minimum, and the plan could have more if that's what the organization needed, but I do see the concern of not having that overflow street parking, and so I would be curious others' thoughts on having an ordinance that would have some clauses in there for if street parking or not.
I think we have to keep in mind that this is a library/museum ordinance for minimum parking. I think Monona doesn't have much street parking. They have a minimum, they're 1 to 800 square feet. They're 15 spaces. They have 40 spaces for their library. So we're talking about a minimum requirement here. We're not making it site decisions and full scope library parking decisions tonight either. I'm comfortable with the 4 recommending bodies that came before Plan Commission's final recommendation. We're also talking about a difference of 6 spots.
So when I watched the Plan Commission, they came up with the 40 spot equivalent, but I didn't really see any like concrete evidence for why they wanted that. It was mostly, it seemed like it was just based on what they felt it should be.
It was the average, Chris.
And I'm sorry, I'm talking. So why also sorry, I lost my train of thought. When I have brought up some issues with the police station, I was told on several occasions that we should trust the experts. And on this, the experts say they're comfortable with 1 in 500. So I don't really know why we would go with anything other than that.
The 1 to 400, the logic was that it was the average amongst the other communities, Chris.
I get that, but I also have seen on several occasions that we don't want to be like other communities. So I don't know why we wouldn't just do.
But then another breath, we want to be one every 500 versus 1 every 250. I like Sarah's
Sorry, go ahead.
impact on what you actually physically need.
I mean, if we're basing physically what we need, it's a minimum parking, so it could end up being 30, but I don't feel super comfortable mandating we have more than we might possibly need.
It works both ways. There can be exceptions for fewer and there can be exceptions for more. So I mean, the speculation always been, well, it depends on the site. Well, we could expect more. I think the chances of us adding more than we need upfront when we're trying to manage a lot of things is extremely low versus having a serious conversation about reducing the requirement based on the actual site. So that's why I really push against even changing it at all. But I would go with the Plan Commission recommendation.
I guess
How
I
many
don't
spots?
understand. Sorry.
How
I
many
don't
spots are there now? Cindy, how many spots are there now?
27 or 29. If you're talking about like the current learning ladder property. I mean, I'm not sure where, I mean, Plan Commission came up with the 1 to 400 with the math they did, but staff recommendation with the table that Aaron put a lot of time in came up with a recommendation of 1 to 500. I'm going to go with staff recommendation on this.
Okay, so right now we have a motion and a second for what the Plan Commission proposed. So is it easier just to either continue having this discussion back and forth or just vote up and down on this and figure out what we do next? I'm just asking this board.
Will we take a vote?
Yeah, let's vote and then see where it goes.
Okay.
That's
All right.
fine.
With that then, Lisa, please.
Sure. Gage,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Dahl,
Aye.
Valencia,
No.
Cal Nelson,
No.
Stoa,
No.
and Murphy.
Aye.
All right.
So-
I believe it's 4-3, so it
Correct.
passes. And again, it's just a minimum recommendation. And each site's comes up for a site plan approval anyway, so I think that's
Yep.
are also options there for the
There are.
board at the time. With that, then we slide down after all these attachments and everything to Larry. Anything you have else to tell us tonight, Larry?
Yeah, tonight, just real quick, can you hear me okay? I just switched to my Bluetooth, sorry.
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I wanted to just make sure everybody's aware. We're all working very hard on the staff and advisor side with respect to separating any kind of advocacy for the library referendum from the informational side that I think staff's doing a great job with. But there will be some upcoming public meetings and public information sessions, and people are advocating in their own capacities. And I just wanted to remind everyone who I've talked to and those who I haven't that you're all welcome to advocate, even though there's a referendum pending. You're all welcome to advocate. The only prohibition is that we can't use village resources for that advocacy. And so, like, for instance, if you want to attend one of these public meetings, you'd like to give your opinion, you can even say, I'm a village board member. You can do that on your social media. You can communicate as you see fit, as long as you're not using village resources. So you shouldn't be advocating using your village email address or any kind of village IT or anything like that. But outside of that, everything's okay. I know people are trying to be real careful about following this rule, which is great, and I appreciate it. But it doesn't mean you can't advocate. It just means you can't use village resources.
And Larry, just to clarify, when we advocate, we're saying it's from my personal opinion or my personal thoughts, right?
You can even say my personal opinion is, in your case, the village board president.
Okay. All right. I
You don't have
misunderstood
to.
that.
Yeah, you don't have to separate. We always ask that anytime anyone does any press or does anything else, you obviously can't control what they use, but we just ask that you say you're speaking on behalf of yourself and not on behalf of the village board, or in other cases, the library board. And everybody that I've seen so far has done exactly that. And so that's appreciated. It's just important to not That's a different question than advocating using village resources. That's advocating, you know, without authority to, right? As it relates to who can speak for the village proper. But no, you're welcome to give all your credentials, including your current one, when you're explaining to someone who you are and how you come to your position.
Okay. Questions from board members? All right. You heard it from Larry. Keep doing what we're doing. Anything else, Larry?
None for me.
All right. Cameron, you're up.
All right. Hopefully pretty quick today. As promised, this will be the last budget amendment for 2024 and then the first budget amendment for 2025. So during the 2024 budgeting process, similar to this year, we had to budget funds for engineer dollars for the next year. Well, Strand, while they start a lot of the 2025 engineering in 24, they don't necessarily finish it all. So part of this request is there's some work that was done on the multi-use path and Main Street, Taylor Street, and Wheelbridge in 2024, which it represents the amended proposed change of the 41,098. Additionally, you'll kind of see this. I have the 2025 budget amendment on the screen now. That the difference amount is being asked in the 2025 budget request. I'll go back to 2024. This is the last time I'll do that. Just from an accounting perspective, the village will recognize an expense once we put the two plows that were purchased into service. So while we spent some dollars in 2024 for the actual vehicles, technically that's considered a prepaid asset until it gets the rest of the upfitting from Burke. So this request is asking to eliminate the amount that was budgeted into 2024 for the two plow trucks. And then in 2025, you'll see another line come on. And this is a little bit different than the original proposed scope of the plow trucks. The original scope of the plow trucks in 2025 or 2024 was to purchase one and do one upfitting. So this 209,503 represents the purchase of a 2024 and a 2025 truck, one single axle, one double. And then the costs that are within there's another account in the Public Works budget is for the actual upfitting. So there's still some additional costs, but this is what we'll end up capitalizing once the fleet is brought to service. I do want to spend a little bit more time on this first section here of the 2025 budget amendment. So Sean took $23, $24, and $25 to complete some North Lawn ADA sidewalk improvements. So this portion of the budget amendment is actually saying, well, we spent that money in 2024 per a planned project, so we're not going to still have the authority to spend that $10,000, so eliminating that from the budget. Kind of the second, because when we were doing the budget, the full scope of the referendum and the plan hadn't been decided, as well as a lot of contracts we signed at the end of 2024. So 2025 didn't have any amounts in the budget for services in the for the library referendum. So this portion of the budget request is to establish the remaining budget or the budget for January through April to complete referendum services. Going down, we did purchase one squad car in 2024 for the 2025 budget. There was, however, there is still 3 upfittings that are being required in 2025. So we are overall asking for a $20,000 reduction in the equipment purchases. And we will see some trade-in value from so just to kind of put this into perspective and really where equipment are at, we have 3 police vehicles that were 2 were in the 2024 budget and 1 of the 3 in 25 that we don't even have because they still need to be upfitted. So that's part of this. And then we still have our 2 other squad cars that are coming yet for 2025. So we are still experiencing a pretty significant delay with getting this infrastructure into service. And then, so we weren't able to finish the 3 smaller upfront fittings for the squads in 2024. So those funds are going to be now in 2025. I know I kind of threw a lot at everybody here, but I'm more than happy to answer some questions here.
Cameron, I like the way you call it, rather than snow plow, you call it snow patrol in there, I think is what I've read. So
yeah,
that sounds more interesting.
Kyla actually corrected me because that's the technical term. It is a snow patrol truck. That's what the vendors use for the name. So Kyla was the one who kindly corrected me on that one.
Okay. Questions from board members?
Yeah, Cameron, I got a question. The Sweeney Group 12,000, that's for fundraising. Is there any reason why we wouldn't offset that with funds raised?
Yeah, so ultimately I think the board can give whatever direction if the goal would be to recoup any of those funds from a capital campaign. That would just have to be decided collectively or how to handle that.
So not part of the agenda tonight, Pete.
Got it.
But can be considered.
Thanks, Cameron, for bringing these forward. I think it's important to understand the year to year and of course, keeping everything reconciled neat. So I appreciate that. So with that, I would make a motion to approve budget amendment 2024-007. Can I lump them together?
Sure.
And 2025-001 as presented.
I'll second both of those.
All right. If there's no concerns with the board, then yes, they can be lumped together. They're separate on the agenda, but unless anybody has any concerns about that. I'll pause and let that. All right, not hearing any. So any other discussion related to these amendments?
Because this is budget related, I do just want to let the board know we are between 30 and 45 days out on implementing the ClearGov product, which will make our budget and actual information available on the village website. It will have detailed debt information, detailed expenditure information, and we decided as a group to go back 5 years. So there'll be 5 years worth of history going back to 2020. So Cassie and I have been working on implementing that. So I appreciate people's patience, but that stuff will be readily available here in the next 30 to 45 days.
That is great. Thank you, Cameron.
Thanks, Cameron.
Any other discussion on this? All right, as Lisa says, we can do another roll call.
Dahl,
Aye.
Gage,
Aye.
Kel Nelson,
Aye.
Murphy,
Aye.
Stoa,
Yes.
Valencia,
Aye.
and Williams.
Aye. Lisa, you're going to run out of that pad that you have there. You're checking off all of us, so you're running out of those slips. With that, communications business regarding first up, consideration of the vouchers. Any questions, comments regarding the vouchers as presented?
I move to approve the vouchers as presented.
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Cindy. Thank you, Sarah. With that, any other discussion on those? All right, having heard none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? I didn't wear out any more of your pads there as far as checking these off, but are you okay with that, Lisa?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, usually it's not controversial. Correspondence, anybody have any? I don't have any right now, but anybody on the board have any correspondence they would like to share? All right, upcoming community events. Anybody want to shout out anything? I think everybody's tired. Next then, future agenda items. Matt or Aaron, anything you want to call out that we need to?
We will reschedule with
Yes.
Olivia Perry with Dane County. And we will have a report from the any feedback that we receive from the next police station public information meeting. And I believe Chief and or Ingberg can also share just, you know, some of the new renderings or updated renderings and what some of the internal features look like.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
I have
Go ahead.
one thing. If we wanted to reschedule the March 17th meeting because of Monona Grove Strings Fest, we would have to consider that at the next meeting. I know we did that last year, and it may, since it's like a district-wide, there may be various ages that participate and public may not be able to attend. Some board members may be conflicted. So if we want to reschedule that again, then we'd have to talk about that next meeting.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Heidi, for bringing that up.
Yeah, and I knew last year that we had a number of parents impacted on the board. So we can add that to the agenda to talk about it for next time.
And I think I moved the library board meeting that Wednesday when you guys moved the village board meeting, and I'm happy to do that again.
Okay, good to know. Thank you, Cindy. Last item 11.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you. I'll
And I'll
second.
second. Pete can have it.
All right.
I'll second.
Do I hear a third?
All right.
Now we're at a phone
Non-debatable. Non-debatable. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your week.
Have a good night.
Have a good election tomorrow, Lisa.
Yeah, good luck, Lisa.
Yeah.
Thank you.